Thank you. Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Local Review Body of the 1st of June 2023. I can confirm the meeting has been properly called and is quorate. Can I firstly ask members to appoint a chair for this meeting? Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Good morning. Could I nominate Councillor Carruthers, please?
Happy to second.
Okay, Councillor Carruthers, are you content to be chair? Thank you.
Thanks very much for that nomination. Happy to take on the chairmanship for today. Thank you, John. So good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Local Review Body. This meeting has been live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. I suppose before I go any further, I'll just approve members' remote participation. Just for procedural reasons, remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting of microphones, switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, write and speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. Anyway, if for some reason that's unsuccessful, we'll take any kind of, if you've got to come in and through audio, we'll take that as well. No materials should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. Our standard rules apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by a roll call, and all members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. We've all heard that a number of times, members. I suppose we're used to this practice now. Item number 2 is a SEDERUNT apologies, and I've already approved members' remote participation. Claire, I think it's to yourself.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've got 7 members present this morning, 6 on Teams, and yourself in the Council Hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a full complement. Thanks for that, Claire. Declarations of interest, members. Does anybody have any declarations of interest or statements of connection which they, in relating to any of these 3 today? Councillor McFarlane, I see your hands up. Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Item number 5. I was contacted by the applicant. I advised them that I was going to be sitting on this committee today and referred them to one of my colleagues, so I've had no further action or involvement than that. Item number 6, the applicant contacted me asking me to see if we could progress the application. Prior to receipt of these papers, I've not seen the paperwork or the plans, etc. So in each case, I feel that my participation can be carried on. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Andy. I forgot to turn my mic off there. I must remember in future. You've picked that up, Claire?
Yes.
Councillor Drysdale, Pauline?
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. I'd like to declare an interest in item number 6, as I have a personal connection with the applicant. So it's not a business connection, it's just a personal connection. So I will remain in the meeting if that's possible, unless governance advises me otherwise, or yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Drysdale, that's as a statement of connection then rather than a declaration of interest. Is that correct?
Yeah, a statement, as you say, Claire, but I think it's a connection whereby I couldn't take place in the discussion or any motions or votes. Thank you.
Councillor Drysdale, just for your reassurance, I've had a quick conversation with you, which I could expand on if required, but my understanding is because of your connection, in this case, you're perfectly entitled to take part in the debate and decision if you wish. Pauline?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to declare the connection was the fact that Mrs. Tarina Dickey used to be my hairdresser many years ago, but I had no sight of this planning application until the LRB papers came before me. I've had absolutely no discussions with anybody about this application, nor the applicants themselves. So if the committee and governance are happy for me to continue within the debate and discussion, I would be comfortable with doing that, as I feel my connection is quite loose. In terms of, I would know Mr. and Mrs. Dickey to say hi to, but that's about the state of the connection we have at present. So if governance are happy with that, then I would be happy to continue. And if the rest of the members are happy, that's fine by me as well. Thank you, Chair.
I think governance advice, Pauline, is always that it's your decision as an elected member. But that's exactly what I relayed to Claire, our governance officer here, and the advice that she gave me, which you can give you reassurance if that's okay, Claire, when I come off the mic, is that because of that level of connection, you're absolutely fine in regards to, from a governance point of view, taking part in that actual particular item, but ultimately the decision lies with you. But Claire, could you give further comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, the decision does always lie with members, but as you've just outlined there, Councillor Drysdale, the connection does seem fairly remote, so a statement of connection would appear to be appropriate in this case. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Claire.
That's really helpful.
Thank you. Sorry.
To you as well.
Sorry, Pauline. I've talked over you there. Okay, we got what you said, though. I don't think I've got anybody else coming in. I have I suppose it's a statement of connection in regards to item number 6 as well. So as part of I was contacted, like Councillor McFarlane, but it was in regards to a complaint coming in, and it was a procedural point under my chairmanship of the Economy and Resources Committee in particular, and previously has been a leader of a group in the council. So it was procedural, and it's quite clear within it was in regards to the timelines in particular. So I'm being quite open and transparent about that, and that comes out within the actual report itself. Oh, thanks so much, members. I'll find my place. I think it's over to yourself and Claire, just to give us a script in regards to Claire.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can confirm we've got 3 notices of review for consideration today. The first being item 4, land at West GALDENOCH Farm, STONEYKIRK, STRANRAER, refusal of planning permission for erection of dwelling house, formation of access and installation of septic tank, SOAKAWAY and EIT source heat pump, 22/11/65 full. You have the notice of review, report on handling, observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer. You have the planning application form and associated supporting information. I should point out that members have been provided with the full information for the labour requirement reform, which has been issued as an exempt supplement pack. Should members wish to discuss the detail of it, it's recommended that the public would be excluded as it relates to business information that could be considered exempt in terms of paragraph 6 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Should this be required, this would only be for that part of the discussions. You have the decision letter, and you also have the relevant extracts of the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4, as well as photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal are that the proposed development fails to meet any of the criteria in Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 Policy H3 and associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside, which only permits the erection of new houses in the countryside in particular circumstances, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. In particular, it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that there is an essential need for another house for the needs of agriculture and the proper functioning of the farm business at West GALDENOCH at the specific site chosen, nor that a suitable site cannot be found at a more closely related to the core of the farm enterprise where existing farm buildings and houses are located. As such, the proposal does not accord with the development plan as stated in the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 Policy H3 and adopted supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside. The requested method of determination, the applicant is asked that review be dealt with on the basis of the review documents only, with no further procedure. Grounds stated in the notice of review are in summary. The decision arrived at on the planning application is not a proper or fair interpretation of the actual terms of the development plan policy and supplementary guidance. It is also contended that provisions of the latest government policy in respect of such proposals as set out in the new National Planning Framework 4 cast a different light on those matters. The new Planning Framework 4 has been produced, which was not in place at the time of the original application. The applicant has extended the capacity of the farm in terms of agricultural buildings and livestock numbers since the original application, increasing the business need for further on-site accommodation. It is submitted that despite the comments of the case officer in the delegated report, more than sufficient information has been provided through the content of the submitted supporting statement and the detailed report prepared by ACC, confirming the extent of agricultural activity at holding in excess of 14 labour units, which alone can be conclusive enough to establish that there is a very real and essential land use related need for a further dwelling on the holding. It's acknowledged that there may be tasks that are routine enough they can be carried out by a worker living elsewhere and commuting to work. It is, however, contended there are other aspects of the work at the holding not appreciated or considered within the delegated report that require a more permanent presence, particularly when animals are calving and also in respect of health and safety issues throughout the year. For it is contended that despite the comments of the case officer in respect of the report, there is more than sufficient direct business-related activity at the farm than to substantiate the required need for at least one other worker to reside permanently at the farm and cover for those periods when the applicant is away or incapacitated for other reasons. In relation to a recent appeal decision at Shield Hill of Mayburn, it is submitted that given the near identical situation, the appeal case in this one, where essential farm workers have to share a home, there is also sufficient material grounds in that determination to accept here also that such sharing arrangements are not healthy or appropriate and serve to establish beyond a reasonable doubt in respect of this case, and that there is indeed a real need for another dwelling to meet the housing needs of West GALDENOCH Farm. The building on the land offers no scope for conversion to a dwelling house as such as the claimed need. It is also contended there are grounds to support this proposal on the basis that it represents beneficial reuse of a previously developed parcel of land at Brownfield site. The site selection process extended to the consideration of any previously developed areas around the farm unit that were not required or essential to the operational practices on the farm. A further consideration in that approach was that by reusing land previously impacted by farm activity, it meant no productive land on the holding would have to be sacrificed for the new house, and therefore also represented the more sustainable option 2. Part 2 of Policy 17 of NPF 4 supplements the Council's definition of what constitutes a brownfield site in LDP 2 by clarifying that in some form of intervention is necessary for that land to return to its natural state, then it can be rightly regarded as a constituting a brownfield site and therefore an opportunity for redevelopment. The definition does not exclude any particular previous use, for example, agriculture. This is a brownfield site in terms of NPF 4 Policy 17. It is also contended that proposed development accords with Part 5 of NPF 4 Policy 17 as the applicant will be maintaining its majority control of the farm business. The decision arrived at by the appointed officer relies upon part consideration of the Development Management Practice Note Policy H3 Housing in the Countryside as being a material consideration. However, this document predates the current LRP2 and has never been through due process for it to be considered a legitimate statement of actual council policy. It should not be given weight as a relevant material consideration. The information submitted establishes an essential need for a further dwelling house at this holding. The proposal also represents a beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. The development therefore accords with the provisions of the development plan and the permission should be granted. You have all the relevant development plan policies in your papers, the LTP2, policies OP1, OP2, OP3, H3, IN8, IN9, T2 and supplementary guidance, design quality and placemaking, housing in the countryside and agricultural soil. You also have references to the relevant sections of MPF 4, being policies 1, 2, 12, 16, 17 and 18. So the main issues for the LRB to consider: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LTP 2 policy H3 and the guidance set out in the adopted LTP 2 supplementary guidance in relation to the principle of the proposed development of the application site? MPF 4 is now part of the development plan. The decision on this case was taken by the appointed officer before MPF 4 became part of the development plan. Please note that any decision taken today would need to make a specific reference to MPF 4 policies as part of the development plan. So your decision today must be either vary the planning decision or grant planning permission making, the reasons clear and explicit. Does the proposal accord with the terms of MPF 417, rule of homes and principle? In particular, does the proposal meet with the terms of points 2 and or 5 of MPF 4 policy 17 as claimed by the applicant? Does the proposal now accord with the terms of the development plan following the introduction of MPF 4 as part of the development plan? And members satisfied that the detail of the proposal in terms of general siting, landscape fit, design, massing, scale, proportions, finishes, agricultural detailing and access meet the terms of the development plan? And if it is not considered the proposal accords with terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the plan? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? And if members are minded not to uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what sets of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And if members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision to make explicit reference to MPF 4 in the decision notice, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required? So, having outlined the documents within your papers, it now falls to the LRB to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It's confirmed that there will be no representations from any party heard today. The options available to the local review body are: they can decide that they have sufficient information to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations. The LRB would need to state precisely what was required and who would provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who would be invited to speak and on what matters. Resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied, which could be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would not allow a decision to be made today. And if the LRB resolves it has sufficient information and no further procedure is required, the LRB has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. You have a planning advisor present at your meeting. It's confirmed he's not had any involvement for this case prior to the submission of the notice of review and was not the case officer or the appointed officer for this application. Is here purely to provide independent advice as needed and masters of planning policy, law or process to the local review body. You also have a solicitor present today who will provide acts independently if the LRB require any specific advice on matters of law. So members are clear, no further clarification is required. I'll firstly ask the Chair to lead the debate. In the first instance, to lead the LRB through your papers together to decide if you have sufficient information before you to make a determination today.
Thank you very much for that, Claire. Members got any questions in regards to what Claire's just read out? Then we'll go through the paragraph by paragraph in regards to the ALTSO report in front of us. Before I do that, no, So going back to, take that as no, pages 17, I think it is, to 29, we've got notice of review dated the 1st of March 2023 and the related documents. Do members have any questions or points in regards to that they'd wish to raise at this point? Robert, are you coming in? No, Robert?
It was just a question, Chair, if you wanted to see the pictures at this point in time.
Well, thank you very much for that. We'll do that first. So Robert's shows the pictures but are outlined in the very end of this report. So we'll do that first as a point of process, and we'll go through the documents. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome, Chair. It's the usual PowerPoint presentation. These are pictures that have been provided by the case officer. I haven't been out to the application site myself. I know where it is from personal knowledge, not that that's relevant. The only other thing to say really is that these replicate the pictures you have in your papers at pages 173 to 179. I've also noted that the applicant's agent submitted pictures themselves, so they appear at pages 105 to 110 of your papers, but I'm hoping that what is shown sufficiently illustrates the key issues with the site. So the first one is a view from the entrance of the application site, and it's showing the current agricultural shed in situ on that application site. The next view, it's the same building, obviously it's a view of the southwestern elevation. The next picture is showing a view from the northwest into the shed as it presently stands. The next one's a view of the area to the southeast of the site, so you can see that there, it's clearly kind of brownfield in its nature. And then you've got a view looking southwards of the northeastern elevation of that building. This is a longer distance view from the site looking northeasterly towards the farm complex, so that's looking towards West GALDENOCH itself, highlighted by the red arrow. And this is a view, again, a wee distance away from the actual building. Again, it's looking southwards of the northeastern elevation of that building. This is a view of the application site from the C19W public road. It's looking in a southeasterly direction, a long distance view, so you can just make out the kind of shape of the building in the distance there, just above the end of the road. That's a view of the application site from the B7077 public road, and that's looking in a southwesterly direction. And that's another view of the application site. You can see the building just to the left of centre there next to the trees. It's looking in a southerly direction. And this is a longer distance view. It's of West GALDENOCH farm complex and farmhouse from the B7077, looking in a northeasterly direction.
Thanks so much for that, Robert. Any members got any questions or points like to raise in regards to the photographs we've just seen? No, silence, we'll take that as not. So going back to pages 17 to 29, which is notice of review dated 1st of March 2023 and related documents. Any members got any particular points in regards to that section? Take that as a note. Report and handling and related correspondence, pages 33 to 77. Members, have got any points or questions? Take that as a note. I'll happy to go back at any point. Just Keith, you're wanting to speak, Councillor Walters.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. I just wanted to query this thing about the distance, because there seems to be a bit of the distance of the site from the main farm buildings, which seem to be on page 45. The agent says it's 500. The application site is approximately 500 metres to the south of the main farm steading, and then when you're on the what the officer says it's 1.3 kilometres away from the farm. Is there something that we can see that actually shows us exact, like a map or whatever, that actually shows us? Because even in those pictures, it seemed to be quite difficult to tell how far away it was.
Thanks very much for that, Keith. My understanding, I'll come back to Robert with this, you've got absolute clarity. The two different distances is one's is as the crow flies, which what I took through the pictures is about 2 fields away, but the other one's actually using the public road, but I'll let Robert clarify that for absolute accuracy.
That would make sense.
In terms of the information you've got in front of you, your best reference point is the kind of location plan on page 105 of your papers. So that shows the building outlined in red. It's a roughly triangular site. And then you've got West Galdenoch Dairy Farm itself above it. So if you go to 105 in your page 105, sorry, in your documents, and look at that, that shows you the position relative to it. I haven't measured it yet. I can do that just now, Chair, on our ArcView GIS system and come back to you. It might take me a couple of minutes, but I can clarify the distance as the crow flies.
Okay, excellent, Robert. Keith, are you okay? Robert will do that in the background and we'll take any potential further questions, come back to. I think it's referred to in the report of handling as well.
Yeah, that's fine, thanks.
Thank you, thanks so much for that. So Robert will do that in the background as we go on. Don't see anybody else coming at this moment in time. So it's the observations of the appointed officer. That's pages, sorry, the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, pages 81 to 86. Nothing as of yet. Nothing as yet. Which next one's the section 5, plan and application form submitted on the 22nd of June, associated plans and supporting. Oh no, it's no, sorry. I'll tell it, apologies. I'm going back to it. I've got some questions myself in regards to that last point. So, but I'll let Robert kind of catch up because he's doing the check. He's coming in now.
Thanks, Chair. I've just measured the distance between the actual building, which is within the application site. So if you're looking at the plan on page 105, I'm taking an as the crow flies distance measurement to the farmhouse at West Galdenoch, and it's 618 metres. So that's just less than half a mile. Mile's 1,600 metres, so it's slightly less than half a mile as the crow flies, 618 metres.
You okay with that, Keith?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, so it's closer to what the agent said than it is to what the officers said.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Okay, there's about 100 metres of difference, I think, between the two. So, Robert, I've got on page 9, I'm just going to rip this out so it's handy up. Page 90 in particular. It's probably more about clarity in regards to statements and it's how policies are being applied. Let me just get to it. So, because I think it's relative to the case today, page 90 itself, so we've got 2 or 3 questions here. So I am still looking for members. If they want to come in at any time, please do. Third paragraph actually, into it says it's about the proximity and the argument to try and dismiss legitimate claims for need, as is the case here, was removed from the supplementary guidance. I just want clarity in regards to that. It says that, because it is mentioned within the report of handling, that particular point, but what's been said here is that, just in my own mind, that was actually removed and it shouldn't be considered in the first place. Would that be the case? Because obviously as you read the report of handling, you do take on board what's being said, you take that as being gospel, but it's been said. It's only a point of process, really, in real terms, but for myself personally, I'll do one at a time. I've got 3, I think, altogether.
No, that's fine. Just some clear, Chair. So it's in relation to the statement that's been provided by the agent for the applicant, and you're looking at it on page 90, and it's the second paragraph on that page. And what he's saying is that the proximity of the dwelling house to the farm is irrelevant in terms of present LDP2 guidance. Yeah. Right, that's fine. That's certainly something I can check. I can look at the document and just check that just now.
Excellent.
I'll come back.
And what I'll do is we'll go through. I'll give you another couple of questions. What he's saying is it was removed as part of the LDP2, I think it was, but it's still being referred to by the case officer in his that the proximity being close to the main holding itself. But that's what's being claimed there. It doesn't. That's not the case, no, because it was removed. Page 91. It's the North Cow case. So I suppose just as a matter of, and we even could take notes of these and come back, and I'll go through the rest of the stuff. This is the only questions I've got. There's an appeal. So just below that, the next paragraph down is appeal, and it was North Cowshaw, I think it's near Lochmaven's been referred to. Yeah. And the relevance of that, it said it's like for like, it's almost exactly the same. The relevance of that case being overturned, and the argument in particular is round about the different families having to share a dwelling. And the report took a particular view on that, how that maybe should be applied. And the third point was on, that was page 9091. In fact, there's a 4 point, sorry. So there's actually the Brownfield site I've got as well. So the second paragraph down on page 91, I think it's all relative to the discussion in the case. I'm not trying to... so it's, the officials have made a point of excluding agricultural land as representing unacceptable, so it goes on. But a brownfield site. But what's been made clear in here is actually under NPF 4, brownfield site has been, I think it's been made clear that that is acceptable now, this type of, and the council's looked at this. This is historic, obviously, the December decision, so it's before NPF 4 came in, so they're saying, so I've just advice in regards to that particular point as well, please. And it's page 92 is the next one. It is policy 17, and we can even come back to this in debate if it's felt more appropriate, Robert. But it's so it's highlighted in particular on page 92 in yellow, and it's again it's about the reuses of a brownfield site. It leads into my previous point, and how it's demonstrated to be necessary to support the sustainable management. And it's NPF 4 linking, really in real terms. I think NPF 4 seems to be linking. There's been a change in February, obviously, but to the previous reporter's decision as well. Maybe that's, if you feel it's more appropriate to leave that to debate, I'm happy to do that, but you're pre-warned, so to speak.
Thanks, Chair. I'm certainly going to be able to answer all of those questions. It might take me about 5 minutes, though, so I'm not sure it's in the clerk's gift, but it might be worth taking a recess for 5 minutes just till I get the answers to those questions, Chair.
I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll just we'll go through this, and if there's any further questions, just in case there's any more, Robert, we'll go through this, and then we'll take 5 minutes at that point, and then we'll go into debating session.
That's fine. I can work on them in the meantime, a bit like countdown.
Excellent, thank you. It is a bit. Robert's fingers are moving at a rapid pace trying to keep up with this stuff. Apologies for bringing this in. Maybe I should have brought it in better at debate and session, but ultimately pre-warned is better, I think. Let me get back to my papers. So I didn't see anybody else coming in pages 89 to 93. So I'll move on to the next point, which is plan applications form submitted the 22nd of June 22, associated plans and supporting information. That's pages 97 to 129. Keith's speak is historic for what I can see. Don't see anybody else coming in. Decision letter, pages 133 to, I suppose you've already covered that. Pages 133 to 139, it's a decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated the 3rd of December 22. Pages 143 to 169 is relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4. Councillor Campbell, John.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's in relation to your point on page 90, because that's something that I picked up as well.
Absolutely.
Which was, yeah, it's because if you look on page 151, which obviously section 7 covers the local development plan and national planning framework, but in 151, all it gives you is the references to the supplementary guidance. It doesn't. There's no way of checking if the statement by the appellant on page 90, that it was completely dispensed. I can't find it unless I actually go on the council website. The supplementary guidance is just reference to it, but there's no actually supplementary guidance. So it would be helpful if Robert could cover that point that you suggested. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, John. I wonder if Robert can cover that. John, if you're comfortable, cover that as we go into debate, unless we've got to stop for 5 minutes. But Robert, have you got that and comfortable to cover it later? It might be for governance as well, John.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Right, members, I think that's everything as far as the paperwork's concerned. I think for the process, keep me right clear if we're wrong. Just as Robert's working away in this, I don't see anybody else coming in for questions, but questions obviously through debate can be brought up at any point in regards to any part within the papers. The first decision was, I noted and it was verbalised earlier by the clerk as in regards to they're looking for a decision without any further procedures. And as far as information is concerned, are members content that they've got enough information to make a decision today? So it's comfortable enough for me.
Happy to proceed, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. John, was that?
Yeah, this is Tony. This is Tony, Chair. Yes, I would say so.
Thank you, thanks very much. So Claire, we're comfortable to go forward today. So I think, in as far as this is concerned... Oh, John, sorry, I thought it was in the same point. John, Councillor Campbell?
Well, it is, but I think once we've got clarity from Robert, and then I think we should just proceed with that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I wonder, do you want 5 minutes then, Robert? Just to get everything clarified?
Probably about 2 minutes now.
Right. Members, can we just take, what time is it showing? 11:06, come back at 11:00, well, just make it 11:10, 10 past 11. We okay with that? And that way we can just go forward with the decision making. Excellent, getting the thumbs up, that's excellent. Robert?
I think I'm ready now, Chair. I think I've got the answers.
Good man, Robert. That saves us having a wee adjournment, so unless somebody's desperate on an adjournment. Robert, over to you.
Okay, just in relation to the first point, and that's a question about LDP2 supplementary guidance. And you're looking, I think it was page 90 of the papers, where the agent for the applicant has said that the proximity factor isn't mentioned in the LDP2 supplementary guidance, the latest version. So what I've looked at there is LDP2 supplementary guidance in housing in the countryside. So this is an adopted part of the development plan. It was, the date is February 2020, it's supplementary guidance. It forms part of LDP2. LDP2 is part of the development plan. That's still the case. When I've looked at this, section 3.0 of that document relates to agricultural or rural business need generally. And when I look at this document, I think paragraph 3.4 is crucial because it does mention proximity. And for the benefit of members, I'll read this out. It says this part of the policy, so that's looking at essential need for a house in the countryside, also acknowledges that there are particular circumstances when a new house in the rural area is required to accommodate a full-time worker who is employed in a business that requires a rural location, where the nature and demands of the work concerned make it essential for the person engaged in the business to live at or very close to the site of their work. And then it says for newly established businesses, long-term viability must be demonstrated. But the key thing in that paragraph is that it's saying that the person's engaged in the business to live at or very close to the site of their work. So there is a kind of proximity principle there, although it isn't any more specific than that. The appeal that was mentioned. Sure, absolutely.
So it was myself that asked that question. So I'll just come back on that particular point, Robert. So if it's close, so my understanding is, I'm not sure if it's the rented part or the actual ownership, but it's 2 fields away. Looking to go back to Councillor Walters, it's 2 fields. It is within the actual workplace, I would have said, if it's within the land ownership. So it's getting that. So my understanding is, so does it have to be the holding itself or the actual agricultural hold? So is it the farm, again, with actually farm is itself? That's the point where I would have a wee bit of ambiguity and, right, okay, where is it? There's open for interpretation there.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just trying to get my button to work. It is very much a judgment call for you all to take on that policy. Moving next to the appeal, there was an appeal. This was an appeal. It was an application for planning permission in principle for a dwelling house where there was agricultural need, a dwelling house and a garage. Now, the appeal decision was dated the 12th of January 2023, and that's crucial because that was before MPF4 became part of the development plan. I've looked through that decision, and when I look at it, paragraph 8 relates to, I think this is what the agent is mentioning about the sharing of the house. And again, I'll read this out. The reporter says at paragraph 8 of that appeal decision notice, while it may be possible for both the applicant and his son to continue to live in the existing farmhouse I note that this is not a particularly large building and already accommodates other family members. I consider it to be a reasonable expectation for the applicant's son to be able to live in his own home, particularly as he gets older and may wish to start a family of his own. While the supplementary guidance states that personal circumstances should be discounted, this is not to say that there should not be a reasonable expectation for essential adult farm workers to have their own homes. I consider that the current arrangements are no longer appropriate. So that's the paragraph where the reporter's taken a view of whether or not people should share the same residential accommodation. The other issue, I think, correct me if I'm going astray here, but I think this will cover Councillor Campbell's comments as well in relation to MPF 4. The crucial thing here to note is, and I think you've done this already, the decision was taken on the 30th of December 2022 under delegated powers. At that point in time, the development plan consisted of Local Development Plan 2, the Dumfries and Galloway version of that, and the associated supplementary guidance. MPF 4 at that point didn't form part of the development plan, and that never happened until the 13th of February 2023. Obviously, you're now determining a case in the light of relevant circumstances and policies and material considerations on today's date, and now MPF 4 is part of the development plan. So that's key, and obviously you have to then look at what MPF 4 is saying. So within your papers, you've got the MPF 4 policies in pages 153 to 157. You've also got the annex in MPF 4, pages 159 to 163, and crucially, you've got the document issued by, the Scottish Government's Chief Planner earlier this year. That's in pages 165 to 169. What's key within that, there is a paragraph there, and it appears in your papers at the bottom of page 165. So I'll just move to that. And it says, whether an LDP has been adopted prior to or after the adoption and publication of MPF 4, LDP 2 has been adopted beforehand. Legislation states that in the event of any incompatibility between a provision of MPF and a provision of an LDP, whichever of them is the later in date is to prevail, and that's enshrined in the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997, section 24.3, as it's been amended. You'll also see in the appointed officer comments the issue of the kind of brownfield site is looked at, so that's pages 81 to 86. I'll just get the precise reference for you. So it's covered at paragraphs 1.11 on page 83. It's also covered at paragraph 3.6 on page 84, and it's also covered at paragraphs 3.9 and 3.10 on page 85. So that is the appointed officer's view on the whole brownfield issue, if you like. But what is key here is you're now looking at you're looking at policy 9 within MPF 4. So this is now relevant to the case where it wasn't when the appointed officer made a decision back in December. So if I can now just take you to, I think it's page 155. Let me just check that. Apologies, it's page 156. So you're now looking at policy 17 of MPF 4, which is rural homes. And if you look at policy 17, part A, point 2, it's basically saying development proposals for new homes in rural areas will be supported where the development is suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area and the development. And when it comes to point 2, it says reuse as brownfield land where a return to a natural state has not or will not happen without intervention. Now, returning to the appointed officer comments, LDP 2 has a definition of brownfield land, but MPF 4 has a different definition of brownfield land. So in line with the advice we have and that has been enshrined in the legislation, if there's incompatibility between MPF 4 and what LDP 2 says, you have to go with the more recent expression of policy, which is MPF 4, and that's now part of the development plan. So when I look at the glossary of terms in MPF4 itself, in the actual MPF4 document, and I've done that, you're looking at page 146 of MPF4. What it defines as brownfield in the glossary of terms is land which has previously been developed. The term may cover vacant or derelict land, land occupied by redundant or unused buildings, and developed land within the settlement boundary where further intensification of use is considered acceptable. So in basic terms, if you consider that this is a brownfield site and it meets the decision that, the definition rather, that's set out in MPF4 on page 146, then you need to then determine whether it's now the case that this is a development that complies with the development plan on that basis. And I'd be happy to discuss this in further detail if that would be happy, Chair. But that's my understanding. I've looked at all the documents that are in front of you today. That's certainly my view on the situation.
Thanks very much for that, Robert. That's how I'd read it, was like that. So I just wanted that clarity. So probably come back to that through debate. So we're still in questions in regards to, well, in fact, I think we're in debate now, actually, aren't we? Councillor Baretti. Tony.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. He was a bit quick when detailing which pages on 83 to 85. So could you repeat which paragraphs you had pointed out?
Yeah, happy to do that, Chair. When I've looked at the appointed officer's comments on the brownfield issue, if you want to call it that, particularly it's paragraphs 1.11 that are key. These are the key paragraphs in the appointed officer's comments: 1.11, 3.6, 3.9, and 3.10, because they all look at the brownfield issue, and it's also the kind of latter three of those paragraphs are also considering it against the terms of MPF4. So you've got the views of the appointed officer in relation to the issue that we're discussing now.
That's great, okay. Chair. Thanks. I'll read that again. I'll let you carry on.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Robert. So members, Pauline.
Yeah.
Aye, Pauline, go on.
Hello, sorry, Chair. Could somebody repeat Keith's question, please? Councillor Walter's question, because I couldn't hear it due to the echo. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Robert. I think the question was in regards to paragraphs on the report, Arnold, was it? Paragraphs 1.1, but 3.6, 3.9 and 3.10, but Robert.
Yes, it was. He was seeking clarification of which paragraphs I felt were relevant in the appointed officer comments, and they were paragraphs 1.11, 3.6, 3.9 and 3.10, and that's in relation to the kind of brownfield issue, if you like.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Members, so in real terms, we're in debate. We've agreed we've got enough information. Robert's clarified questions from all sides. Don't see MD else coming in yet, but when I read this, so I'll outline my own thoughts to start off with. When I read this particular report, I thought it had been a material change since the decision back in December, and MPF4 has superseded some of our policies, and felt very sympathetic towards this actual case being overturned and approved. So that's a very simple way of me putting it. I went into ask questions earlier to outline that about beneficial redevelopment of brownfield site. This is clearly a brownfield site. I think that's the advice that we've been given. Historically, it hadn't been a brownfield site, could be identified as a brownfield site that could be used for this type of development. So anyways, Councillor Baretti, I'll be quiet at that point and come back in later. Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to ask, at what point is the exempt document pack? Because I know we've got it, and I think what Claire said that it isn't of any use in this particular case. So I don't know. There is a page on it at page 8, which kind of says that they've got 15 more people working in this farm. Now, we've
Tony, Councillor Bretty. Sorry, she never said it. She said the polar opposite to what you're saying. And if you want to talk in any detail in regards to that, we'll go into private session for 10-15 minutes. Have them your questions and points discussed if you want to get the detail. But she actually said it was material.
Yeah, I'll do that, Chair. But what I'll say is that looking at the brownfield site, looking at the current buildings there, those buildings were put up when agriculture 50 years ago was in a different state. We're looking at a complete change in the way agriculture is done, and certainly in that part of the Rins. And I think also there was mention about that the area was 5.5 kilometres from Stranraer. Well, it depends how you view 5.5 kilometres as being rural or isolated. For some people, if you haven't got a car, it is isolated. And the other thing I would kind of note is that this 600 metres from the farm to this proposed area, well, I've seen plenty of farm workers going in 4x4s directly to a place of work. So, or in this case, it would be to that location. They wouldn't be using a road if they had to just take themselves to it. So I think there's a couple of things that would side with I would side with your view on this. On the face of it, things have changed. But I'll be happy to discuss it later, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tony. And like I say, just give me the nod if you want to go into detail in regards to that Labour report, and we'll go into private for the length of time it's required. Ian, Councillor Howley, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. No, having listened to Robert's interpretation of what a brownfield site consists of nowadays, if you're quite happy to go forward with a motion outlining your basis of support of this, I'm quite happy to second it, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Ian. Councillor Howley, I'll just get other members a chance to come in. Councillor Drysdale's coming as well. Pauline.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I know a motion hasn't been proposed at present, but I would be prepared to present a motion on the wording for that. But obviously, it might be easier coming from yourself, Chair, or from the officer. But if you wish some wording, I'm happy to present that after the debate. We are in session, aren't we? So we could present that now if you wish.
If you wish, Pauline, we're more than happy for you to do that if you wish. But
okay. I don't. Sorry to interrupt, Chair. I don't want to step on Councillor Howie's toes. So if he wants to present that motion, I would be happy to second it, or I can read the motion that I'm proposing and we can discuss it if that's the easiest way forward.
I suppose we've four out of 7 have come out and declared their hand, so to speak. So we're in support of it, and I've outlined the bulk of the reasons why I like to see it supported. Brownfield site. I think the proximity argument as well. I didn't touch on that earlier, but I think because it's within the agricultural holding, go back to Councillor Barrettis just said you could travel across the fields, but actually the activity you could be undertaking that particular day could be a cow or a sheep, whatever it may be, in right next to, adjacent to this, if this house gets built. It doesn't have to be back to the holding because of the size. And 15 labour units, 15 people employed there, sorry, that indicates to me that that's a substantial farm. So I'm quite sure it goes beyond the perimeter of where this brownfield site is being located. So there's a number of things in there for me, and maybe if you could present your motion and Pauline, and we'll ask Robert just in regards to clarity, because we would usually look at conditions and such like as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. So I would propose that we support a motion to support the planning application of the erection of a dwelling house under NPF 4 Rural Policy 17.2. It's reuse of brownfield land where a return to a natural state has not or will not happen without intervention. And policy number 5, it is demonstrated to be necessary to support the sustainable management of a viable rural business or croft, and there is an essential need for a worker, including those taking majority control of a farm business, to live permanently at or near their place of work.
I think for me, my view on that is that would be fine. It seems obvious from the debate that I've been listening to that with the change of the definition of brownfield development that's set out in MPF4 combined with policy 17 contained in MPF4 that you now think this complies with the development plan, and on that basis it should be supported and granted permission. It's obviously within the gift of members, but you know, looking at possible conditions, you've got the council's roads planning team leaders' comments in pages 71 and 72, the whole load of roads conditions and directives there and reasons. You might want to think about imposing those in any grant of planning permission. There would now be the standard timescale conditions, which would mean that the development would have to be implemented within 3 years of the date of the permission, which would be condition 1, and then the roads conditions would follow. There's a consultation response from Scottish Water, pages 73 to 77, but I don't think it really adds anything that would be a condition. It'd be more a directive. And beyond that, I don't honestly think, if you're comfortable with the principle of it, which you seem to be, and you're comfortable with design finishes and so on and so forth, I don't actually think it would really take more than that. That would certainly be my advice, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Robert. So, Pauline, you've moved that. Ian, Councillor Howell, you want to second that, or I can second it, whoever's looking to, but I think we'll have a second and make that a formal proposal. Then we'll go back to ask Claire in regards to outline the decision that's been made.
Happy to second, Chair.
Councillor McFarlane, second that. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that, Andy. So the decision's been made in real terms. So what I'll ask you to outline the decision, I'll ask Robert to touch on the conditions, then that'll be the, and Laura, if you got any, no, Laura's for content as from a legal point of view. So Claire, if you could outline the decision that we've approved that, please, and I'll ask Robert to go over the conditions. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I can confirm the LRB have agreed to approve the plan and permission, given that the application complies with the development plan, in particular MPF4 policies 17 points 2 and 5, subject to conditions for the timescale and the roads conditions on page 70 and 71 of your papers, and the directives for Scottish Water.
Robert.
Thanks, Chair. Looking at the conditions in the roads response, you're looking at pages 71 to 72. These are coded, but basically what you're looking at, the first condition, C103, means that before occupation of the dwelling house, a lay-by would be provided. That lay-by would be 9 metres along the back, and it would have a 1 in 40 gradient draining away from the public road. The second condition that's listed is fairly self-explanatory. The access point to the site needs to be 3.5 metres wide, and it's taken from the rear of the lay-by that I've just mentioned. The next condition mentions C104, surface water trapping, is just to make sure that you have surface water trapping at the point where the access to the site meets the public road, so that you don't then get puddles forming on the public road. It just traps and drains that. C112, siting of gates, is that any gates are located at least 6 metres back from the edge of the public road, and that's just to make sure that when you arrive at the house, you're not parking and blocking the road. When you're undoing the gate, you've got an area to pull off into, if you like. Condition C115, access gradients. So for the first 5 metres of the access into the site, the gradients to be no greater than 8% or 1 in 12.5. C121, standard car parking layout for development, which would be 3 car parking spaces. There's nothing about a turning area within that. I would recommend as a slight change to that be adapted to include a turning area as well as a car parking layout as a slight change. Visibility areas design and provisions on both sides of the access linking to the public road. You'd have splays measured 2.4 metres back from the edge of that road and 90 metres in either direction, clear from obstruction, so that when vehicles are at the entrance to the site, they've got a clear view of what's coming along the road. So that's a road safety thing. On the C19W, you've got then a requirement, C124 is a requirement to keep that area clear from obstruction, so it's not interrupting a kind of driver's eye view for the lifetime of the development. And the final one, C134, is surfacing of vehicle access prior to occupation. So you've got to surface the first 5 metres of the access from the public road before the house is brought into use. And that's just to stop loose materials, grit, dirt, gravel, that kind of stuff getting pulled onto the public road. The directives are fairly straightforward. That's just, requirement for the applicant to contact the roads maintenance and network coordination team to get a road opening permit to do those works. And the final one is just given their address. Directive, we would normally put a directive pointing out the Scottish Water advice that you see on pages 73 to 77, and beyond that I think that's all that's required. The first condition, like I say, would be a standard time condition requiring them to implement the development within 5 years. Sorry, 3 years, not 5. It used to be 5.
Thanks so much for that. Paul, and your hand's up. Have you got a particular point?
Yeah, well, thank you for all of that. I take it we don't have anybody from the roads teams in our planning meeting today.
No, but was there a particular question? There's not much Robert doesn't know about roads.
No, I will just ask you then, Robert. I just want to make members aware, and I think certainly in Ward 1, 2 and 3, we do have some issues with farms moving slurry across some of our towns. I don't think we can, or the roads department can put conditions in that we can stop that happening. That's not to say this farm has other farm or land that they're moving slurry to and from, but you know, it is a major problem in some of our towns at the moment, and some residents and users of farms using these vehicles for social purposes. Not going to the details there, but I'm just wondering, is there a roads condition to just limit the farm to between the two units, or can we not do that? I don't think we will be able to, but it's just a question, Robert. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, it's an application for a dwelling house, so you could impose conditions as you feel reasonable in relation to the development. But the development in this case is a dwelling house, so I wouldn't consider that it would be, you know, an originator of lots of vehicle movements involving slurry.
Agree with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Justification is certainly the holding. I should say the dominant. I think it's Councillor Campbell, and I'm not sure if Councillor McFarlane wanted to come in as well, but John, you first.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the delegated report. I mean, roads have said no objections subject to conditions. So I think it would be unreasonable to put a condition that Councillor Drysdale is proposing. So as Robert's already outlined, it's for a house and not a farm. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, no, I think that's, like I said, it's the reasonable tests. Was Councillor McFarlane, he was wanting, and then Laura will bring Laura in.
Yeah, Chair, I was just going to say that what Councillor Drysdale was referring to there is really a roads policing matter. It's there are farm vehicles are allowed to travel certain distances and whatever, so it'd be an enforcement for police, not a matter for us, I don't think.
Agreed, and I think that says we've covered that. But Laura, you want to come in the same point, is it?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to reassure Councillor Drysdale that there is provision under the Roads Scotland Act for mud on the roads, that enforcement action can be taken if necessary by the Roads Department in conjunction with the police.
Excellent, thanks for that, Laura. Okay, we've covered that. So we've covered the decision. It's been approved. We've covered the conditions. Nobody's coming in with anything else, and we've covered your particular point, Pauline. Excellent, that's us, made a decision. Next item. Just for the sake of, is everybody comfortable to carry on? Or they want a 5-minute adjournment before we go to the next one?
Chair, sorry, it's Tony here.
Yeah.
Can we have a 5-minute adjournment?
No problem. What time is it?
11:34.
11:34, so 11:40, okay, thank you.
Fine, that's great.
Members, that's us back. Hopefully we've had the chance to make ourselves more comfortable. So I'll pass it over to Claire for the next item and she'll read out our process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Item 5, Court Now, Gatehouse of Fleet, refusal of planning permission for siting of 4 glamping pods with associated decked area and parking, formation of internal roads and pathways, installation of sewage treatment plant, SOAKAWAY, path lighting, bollards, electric vehicle charging point, landscaping and associated works, 220313 full. You have the notices reviewed, report and handling, the observations of the appointed officer and the applicant's agent's notices review. You've also got the comments made by the applicant's agent on the appointed officer's comments were admitted from the papers when they're published but have been provided to members and published online in a supplement pack. You have the planning application form, you have the decision letter, relevant extracts from LDP2 and MPF4, and you have the photos of the application site and locality. Grounds of refusal. As a result of the siting of the proposed development, it would fail to complement the natural environment and would have a significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact within the Dumfries Hills Regional Scenic Area and from the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area, such that it would jeopardise the scenic landscape contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 policies OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1 and NE2 and the associated supplementary guidance on design quality and placemaking and planning guidance, Fleet Valley National Scenic Area Management Strategy. The question method of determination is that it is on assessment of the review documents only with no further procedure. Grounds stated in the notice of review. In summary, the proposed development will complement the natural environment and will not have a significant or unacceptable landscape and visual impact. That the use of the specific policies within the reason for refusal are not sound or clear-cut as required by the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997. Insufficient weight has been given to policy ED9 in relation to tourism. There are numerous examples close to the application site where similar proposals have been approved. Insufficient weight has been given to MPF4 in relation to tourism. It's suggested that planning permission should be granted subject to conditions and that the reason is that there is no significant adverse impact on the landscape and similar proposals have been approved in close proximity to the site and because the proposals are in accordance with LDP2 policies OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1, NE2 and NPF4 policy 30. You have the relevant development plan policies being OP1, OP2, ED9, HE3, NE1, NE2, IN9 and supplementary guidance, design quality and placemaking, dark sky lighting and the relevant policies from MPF4 being policies 1, 2, 4, 7, 12, 13, 14, 18 and 30. So the main issues for the LRB to consider: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan, in particular with the proposed development fails to complement the natural environment, would it have significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact within the Galloway Hills and National Scenic Area, would it have a significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact within the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area, would it jeopardise the scenic landscape with the proposal fail to accord with the LDP2 policies OP1, OP2, ED1, NE1 and NE2 and supplementary guidance on this basis. Again, you've got NPF4 now within your development plan. The decision on this case again was taken by the appointed officer on the same day that NPF4 became part of the development plan, but does not form part of the assessment of the case. Please note that any decision today would need to make specific reference to MPF4 policies as part of the development plan, so each decision today would be to either vary the planning decision or grant planning permission, making the reasons clear and explicit. Does the proposal accord with the terms of MPF4 policies 4, 7, 14 and 30? insofar as landscape and visual impact arising from the proposal by reason of the proposed siting is concerned. And again, if it is not considered that the proposal conforms with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? And members are minded not to uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for the proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And the members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision to make explicit reference to MPF 4 in the decision notice what changes to the specific reasoning of the decision would be required. So again, having outlined your documents, it falls to the LRB to determine whether you have sufficient information. Again, there's no representations heard from any party today. You have the same options available to you for this item as you had previously. And again, you have your independent planning advisor present who's not had any involvement in the case, was not the case officer or the appointed officer. And again, you have your solicitor present who will act independently as required. So again, I'll ask the chair to lead the debate in the first instance, to lead you through the agenda papers for this item and decide if you have sufficient information before you to make a determination today.
Thank you, Claire. I took a wee note this time, photos, and Robert. So, Robert, over you first, then we'll go through the items individually. Robert?
Thanks, Chair. Again, for members' benefit, the pictures that you're about to see replicate the photos in your papers at pages 374 to 378. These have been provided by the case officer, and I haven't specifically visited the application site. So the first image, it's a view from the public road over the proposed entrance to the application site. So you can see the islands of Fleet and the Solway Firth in the background there. Is quite an elevated site, so that's looking southwards. The second is a view looking north over the proposed site entrance, and the hill in the background is Cairnharrow, and you can see the predominant kind of stone dikes pattern you get in this area with gorse and so on. This is a view panning right from the previous image, looking towards Courtnow. And this is a view looking east from the application site, so that's towards Bengairn, the hill in the middle there. And you can just see the Fleet Bay in the kind of middle ground there as well. This is a view looking southeast from the site, so again you can see the islands of Fleet on the right hand side there. So this is looking towards the southeast. And then you've got a view looking southwest, which is kind of panning around from the previous viewpoint. You can just see the end of the Machars Peninsula on the right-hand side there as you look towards the Solway Firth. And this is a view remotely from the site. This is from Moss Yard Farm. It's looking back towards Courtnow. So this is looking generally in a kind of north-northwesterly direction towards Cairnharrow on the right-hand side. So it gives you an idea of the location of the proposal there. You can see in the kind of middle ground, if you like, you can see those kind of superimposed images, those kind of orangey type objects. That gives you an idea where it is.
Thanks very much, Robert. Members, do you have any points in regards to photographs what Robert's just presented? Points of clarity or questions? Councillor Walters, Keith.
Sorry, can I just the last picture you showed? Did you say that the actual how they'd be seen was superimposed on the photo? How the pods would be seen is superimposed on the photo. Is that what the planning advisor said?
I maybe need to look at that again and review that statement. I'm just trying to work out what that is in the middle ground.
Yeah.
I'll come back in 5 minutes because I don't want to give you an incorrect statement.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Keith. Thanks, Robert. Yeah. Right, okay. See where that is. Okay, what we'll do is we'll move on, carry on, and Robert will give us an indication when he's ready, and he'll come back and answer that question at that point. If there's nobody else coming in, which I don't think there is, we can remove them photos just now if that's okay and come back to them. Oh, sorry, Councillor Drysdale. The only reason I'm saying that is because I can't see who's coming in. Councillor Drysdale, Pauline?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. We can see from these photographs the views from the proposed site, but not from the A75 back up, nor from the beach back up. I take it that's something we won't be able to, if it is an imposed image, or even the site itself. It's just from the site looking down. Is that correct? Thanks, Robert.
I think one of the things when you look at this case, when I was taking my notes on it, there are visualisations on page 289, and there's a visual appraisal on pages 301 to 331 of your papers as well, and that includes photo montages, and I actually found that quite useful in understanding the case. So although I've shown the photos from the case officer today, which is standard practice, please take into account the photographs you've got from the applicant. As I've mentioned, there is a visual appraisal there. It's obviously a key part of the consideration given the reasoning for the decision. There's also a design and access statement in there, pages 255 to 278. So there is quite a lot of visual information there for you to look at, not just the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Thanks, Robert. So if we've got no further points from the papers, which I don't think we have, Robert will come back and answer your question before long, Keith. So pages 187207, that's the notice of review and related documents. That's hands are down, don't see anybody coming in. Like I say, feel free to come in at any point actually, but we'll go through these. Report and handling and related correspondence, which is pages 211 to 235. Observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, pages 239 to 242. Plan and application form submitted the 2nd of March 22, associated plans and supporting information 245 to 331. Pauline, Councillor Dreiser, and I'll just let Pauline come in and then Robert will come in, I think, to answer the question. Pauline?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I'd just like to ask you, Robert, if everyone is able to look at page 308, the definition of the National Scenic Area, which is detailed. So it states on 3.10 that the key concern, as we've read in the report, is the fact that the site is in close proximity to the NSA, which extends over a large area over the Fleet Valley and estuary landscape to the east of the side. This area is shown in L2 yellow. But in these notes, it says that the site itself is out with the NSA, with the closest pod being 330 metres to the west. Are you able just to give us some background on that, Robert, please? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at the GIS system just now, so it's probably best if I put in the address as Moss Yard. If I can spell it right. Thanks, Chair. I'm just waiting for the GIS map to kind of update itself with information. At the moment, in relation to the picture question, where I questioned myself about that, then yes, it does show the kind of visualisation of the proposed units there. So the three kind of orange objects that you see in that picture are, and they're actually lifted from the visual appraisal, which appears at page 324. There's a picture there in the papers, so the case officers put that in as part of our presentation. So I wasn't too sure, I just wanted to double check that at the time. Now, coming back to the National Scenic Area question, I'm just zooming out to get to the right location here. And then I should have an answer. Yeah, for the avoidance of doubt, the application site is just out with the National Scenic Area, but not by much at all. It's in very close proximity.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks very much, Robert.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks, Pauline. Thanks for that. Decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council, 10th of February 23, 335, 339 pages. The relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Council LDP 2, National Plan Framework 4, 343 to 371. Robert's just outlined the photos. Good questions on them as well. Keith, just to be sure, Councillor McFarlane, and then Keith, just to make sure that you're okay with Robert's response. Andy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Similar to Councillor Drysdale, there is mention of it not being located in the scenic area, but it does say that it was wrongly referred to on page 202 as being the wrong RSA, the Solway Coast Regional Scenic Area. In fact, the site is located within the Galloway Hills RSA. So it sounds like there are a couple of different scenic area designations that are overlapping here. And if I go previous to that, I can't quite, page 198, 4.1.4, it says the fact that the site does lie within the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area, but does not lie within the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area. We really could do with that clarifying, because it clearly is a key issue in relation to the decision by the officer. Thank you.
Yeah, I've just looked at that. Just for the avoidance of doubt, the application site does lie within the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area, which is Local Development Plan 2 designation. It does not lie within the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area. It's out with that area. I'm actually looking through the delegated report just now to see if I can get an exact distance as to how far the application site is from the edge of the National Scenic Area, but it's definitely not within it.
That clarification, Andy, for you?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just think it's a key point.
Okay, I'll bring in, Robert's coming back in.
Just on the point of distance, if you look at the report and handling, the delegated report at page 211 of your papers, the case officer said at 1.1 the application site is about 160 metres from the nearest boundary with the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area, and that is 165 metres to the east of the application site. So that's how far away it is, but it's out with it.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Robert.
Thanks, Chair. But I do think it's important. If it's within the area, it's within the area. You know, those boundaries were set for a reason, but as long as we understand what we're dealing with, that's it. Well, thanks.
Thank you. Before I bring you in, John, Keith, were you content with the answer from Robert earlier, Councillor Walters?
Yes, I was. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, John?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm looking at page 311, and it clearly lines out the national scenic, the special protection, site specifics, etc., etc. And there's also a shaded blue area or purple, which is part of the visual envelope. So although it's out with the national scenic area, it's clearly within the bounds of being seen in that sort of, position where it lies, should we say. It will be clearly seen in that sort of terms. I don't know if that's helpful. But what I was going to ask Robert is that on page 291, there's drawings of the type of buildings that are going to be put there. Now, maybe it's just me, but my definition of a glamping pod is no bigger than a garden shed. However, the size of these ones are more like chalets as opposed to actual glamping pods. So I don't know if we've got a definition of what constitutes a glamping pod, because these clearly are about the size of a static caravan or a chalet. So maybe it can help with that. Thanks, Chair.
As far as I'm aware, there's no particular planning description for what a glamping pod constitutes. You know, there's no kind of statutory definition. However, I would say that they will meet the definition of a caravan as has been set out in legislation. And that's key when you look at the Council Environmental Health response in relation to glamping pods. They're always saying, well, these meet the legal definition of caravans, so you'll need an operator's licence to operate it as a caravan site, basically. But yeah, when you look at the drawings on page 291, they've got the dimensions on them. You're looking at something that's 10 metres long and getting on for, well, 3.5 metres wide. So they are quite large structures. Equally, you can get the kind of shepherd's huts, which are like garden sheds and wheels. There's a whole range of things come under the kind of category of glamping pods at the moment.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Robert. Members, if we have no further questions, what we're being asked as we go into session, that is. So we've got a number of options. We decide if we've got sufficient information to enable us to make a determination today. We could request further information, resolve to hold a hearing, resolve to hold a site visit, or if the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information that no further procedures we can go on and determine today. So taking that into consideration, are we comfortable that we've got enough information to make a determination today, or does anybody else think there's something, a site visit so on should apply? Councillor Drysdale.
Sorry, everyone. Yeah, I think Councillor McFarlane's brought up quite a salient point in my eyes since we've got into this debate today, Robert. So through yourself, Chair, can I just discuss, because it's actually become a wee bit confusing in my eyes here, the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area lies to the right, and to the left of the yellow line is the Galloway Hills Scenic Area. Now, whilst we have to take things on a case-by-case basis, it appears to me that the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area perhaps has different rules and regulations, because we all know the amount of pods that have been erected there. It's fine. And also down at the latest developments at Newton. So between Newton and Lagan, there's been a lot of development, but albeit on a smaller scale. So does that mean the Galloway Hills Scenic Area, before we go into session, we probably have to have a better understanding of what's allowed and what's not allowed, which you've alluded to actually, Chair. Do we need to consider when we go into session this very fact? It's just the line is really difficult. Or are both the scenic areas considered to be as important? I'm not making myself very clear, but I think it's quite crucial before we go into session to have that clarified. Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Robert. Thank you.
Pauline, do you feel that needs to be resolved before we go into session? Because when we go into session, that's the kind of questions can be asked, get further clarity and so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
The only reason I'm saying that is because if we feel we've got enough information to make a decision today, then that allows us to go into session in real terms. So if we're comfortable to make a decision today, then we'll come right back to that point that you've made.
Okay, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Barretti?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, I think we've got enough information to make a decision today, and I don't think a site visit is needed.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll move on then. So, Robert, if you could answer Pauline's question, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The first question is about the boundaries of the National Scenic Area, and Councillor Campbell pointed out a useful document which showed that. I think it was in page 301, or it was something round about that. So that is the National Scenic Area. It's a national level designation. Originally, it was the Nature Conservancy Council for Scotland that did these back in, I think it was the 1970s, originally it was, and there were 40 over the whole of Scotland. So the Fleet Valley is one of the fairly few that are in the southern part of the region. We've got 3 now. So these are completely independent of the regional scenic areas. The regional scenic areas have been quite a long-standing local plan and local development plan designation. So the key difference here is when you're looking at national scenic areas and regional scenic areas, you're also looking at different policies that are applicable. So when you look at the LDP2 policies in the papers and you look at page 346 to 347, you've got policy NE1, which relates to national scenic areas, And then you've got policy NE2 that relates to regional scenic areas. The difficulty here is because the regional scenic area has been developed through LDP2 and the national scenic areas are a national designation, they actually overlap. So it's not as if regional scenic area ends and national scenic area starts. It's more like the national scenic area is superimposed on this part of the regional scenic area because it's an extra, it's a nationally significant scenic area within a regional scenic area, if that makes sense. So this is like a highly scenic area, even though the application site is located out with it. So it's not so much a case of what's allowed and what's not allowed within it. It's more a case of looking at the relevant policies. MPF4 will also make reference to national scenic areas and so on with its policies too. So when you're actually looking at the ones in the paper, so it's pages 351 to 359, I'm just looking at it just now, there will be a policy relating to it, and I think it actually comes in under policy 4, which looks at, under point C, development proposals that will affect a national park, national scenic area, site of special scientific or a natural nature reserve will only be supported where the objectives of designation and the overall integrity of the areas will not be compromised, or excuse me, any significant adverse effects on the qualities for which the area has been designated are clearly outweighed by social, environmental or economic benefits of national importance. So there are policies now within, well, that policy 4 particularly in MPF4, which looks at national scenic areas. Again, because the regional scenic area is a designation that's local and it's in LDP2, it's not made, you know, it's not, there's no reference to it within MPF4 specifically.
Pauline?
Yeah, that's a lot clearer. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you, Pauline, for that. Members, we're in session in real terms, huh? So we've made the decision, Cara, make the decision with that further clarity for Pauline. What's our views in regards to the historic decision and how we should move this forward? Say the same. Councillor Howie, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Now, just looking on page 242, 3.3, I fundamentally disagree that it would present an unacceptable landscape of visual impact. I know this area very well, and I totally disagree with that assessment, which I can only assume is a subjective view of the planning officer concerned. My view differs from that. I would also state, when you look at it, other buildings that are in the area which do fall within the National Scenic Area where precedent has been set, I'm considering in particular Gather Restaurant, a very attractive building, nothing wrong with it, but far, far bigger than what's being proposed here. And obviously it was given permission. I don't know if there's an opportunity, Robert, if you have the opportunity to pull an image of Gather up on your computer that can be shared, just to show what has been approved recently, where precedent has been set on a substantial building very close to what's proposed, but actually falls within the National Scenic Area. So I would say precedent has been set on many occasions here. And as I say, I disagree with the opinion of the officer that it would constitute basically an unacceptable visual impact on the area. Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Ian. So each case needs saying the merits that comes into mind initially in your comments, but obviously we've got historic patterns of development. Robert, I don't know if you want to, if you can answer it in full at this moment in time. We need further.
I mean, any decision you take as a local review body is within your gift, and you're taking the decision in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise, and what those material considerations are and how much weight you give to them is entirely a matter of your own discretion, as long as you're behaving reasonably, I think. But it might be worth getting legal advice on that too. The only thing is, I could, we could all Google the Gather, and we could probably come up with an image. I'm not sure I'd be able to introduce that as a leaked document at this stage. That's the only thing, but I am aware of that case. I was closely involved with it actually, so I know where it is, I know what it is, I've seen it since it's in the National Scenic Area. I'm just not sure we could introduce a picture at this stage, that's all.
We'll take legal advice in regards to that. Was there a legal point you thought maybe Laura would want to touch on as well?
It's not something that was in front of the officer when they made their decision, so I would guard against it.
I think Robert's outlined here that you're absolutely entitled to take it. I'll always say planning is subjective. You've got a parameter of policies that you must apply, but ultimately it is subjective, and he's outlined you can have your own personal view when it comes to proposing a particular way forward. If that's okay?
Yeah, happy with that, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Barretti, then McFarlane, then Campbell. Tony.
Thank you, Chair. Like Ian, I know this route, I know this place very well. I know it's outside the particular zone that we've been talking about, and it's inside the Gatehouse one. But, 600 yards away, you've got Auchinleary Caravan Park, and 4 kilometres away on the other side of the big water of Feet Bay, you've got Sand Green. Now, having been to Sand Green quite a few times, if I was looking up towards where this site is, I would be seeing dots, just brown dots on the landscape. I would not be seeing anything particular. And if you're looking in that area, because that road is, it's pretty close to the 75. And I've been up it a few times, and it's pretty much, there are scattered buildings all over the place. I just don't see how it can be a blot in the landscape up there. The buildings themselves are designed so that they will blend in with the local scenery. So I really don't see any reason why it should be looked at as just being something that fits in with the type of business that's already there. And I forgot to say, Lagan Outdoor Centre is not much more than 600 yards away.
Thanks for that, Tony.
But is that okay, Chair?
That sounds good. No, you're making your view quite clear in regards to support, is what I'm taking from that in particular.
Yeah, I think you could probably read into that.
Thanks very much, Tony. Councillor McFarlane, then Campbell, then Drysdale.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to agree with Ian Howie's comments earlier, although I do think that the language used by the officer is merely reflecting the documents and that she's referred to. One concern that I might have is, other people have made reference to the likes of Auchinleary and Lagan and such like, and my concern would be that if we approve this, what would be the likelihood of further development later, whereby, this is quite close to Auchinleary, the fact that we've established that if we were to approve it, that this was okay, and if they come back and want to put another 3 or 4 on, at what point would it become a development that we couldn't actually say no because we've approved it in this occasion? Thank you.
Chair, my response to that would be to advise members that each planning decision is taken on its own merits as circumstances prevail at that time. So you're taking the decision in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Material considerations have to be relevant to planning and they have to be relevant to the development, but it is each case in its own merits. So I think what I would say is, if you're going to make a decision today that's contrary to the appointed officer's decision, the key point is to have a clear set of reasons as to why you've decided to grant planning permission in this case. The worst thing in my experience is if people don't understand why a decision was taken. Typically they'll look at something out in the countryside and say, well, how did that get planning permission? And if it's not well enough explained, then there's not clarity, and that's the worst thing. Of course, even if it is explained, sometimes people aren't going to agree with that. That's just the nature of decision making. But I think, if you're minded to depart from the appointed officer's decision today, I think the most important thing is to explain why. And then when another application comes along, you've got clarity on why a particular decision was taken historically. It doesn't bind us in any way, because each case is taken on its own merits.
Yeah, thanks for that. However, we can see in this application that obviously there has been reference to a number of developments similarly that are round about, and they're using the leaning on that as evidence of why we should support this. So whilst they actually make mention of each case should be dealt with in its own merits, they then sort of say, yeah, but look at all these. Thanks anyway, that's helpful.
Thanks so much for that, Andy. I think that's a very relevant question. Councillor Campbell, then Drysdale.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm getting a wee bit concerned that when we start using words like, oh, we've set a precedence, etc., etc. Now, Robert's already outlined it, and it is my view that we should treat every application on its own merits, and we should, disregard just because somebody did something down the road. I'm of the view that the case officer, although the NP4 wasn't in at the time, but our policies were OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1 and NE2. That's what the case officer was referring to. OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1, NE2, and the appointed officer, along with those, with the National Planning Framework Policy 4 and 30. Now, I've looked at Policy 4 and, the size of these buildings will be a blot in the landscape, in my view. The development proposals, which by virtue of type, location and scale will have an unacceptable impact on the natural environment, will not be supported. And I've got a view that the appointed officers got this one correct. So I would like to move that we, we support the appointed officers' response on this. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks so much for that, John. I'll bring in Councillor Drysdale, and then we'll go back to making a decision. So look for seconders and so on and so forth and justifications. Pauline?
Oh, thanks for letting me in, Chair. I think the answer will be no to this, Robert, but I wanted to just check. It's a bit of a daft laddie question, but can you limit a development in a condition, as in the size of the development? I know we're taking what we see in front of us at the moment. I totally accept that. And it would have to be a reapplication if it was for something slightly smaller, in light with a pod, rather than something that's possibly larger than a caravan, shall we say. But can you limit the numbers in a condition, i.e. that would be the extent of the development? Could we do that as councillors or not? That's my question. Thank you, before I come to a decision.
Thanks, Jack. I think this is probably one for our solicitor that's here today, but my view would be if you're trying to change a development using conditions, you need to be careful that what you're not doing is tantamount to refusing that application. You've got to consider what's in front of you on its own merits. If it's the case that you've got a development of so many units and you think one's not okay, so you remove that by condition, it's not ideal. It would be better just to refuse the application if you're concerned about the number of units, rather than try and put a condition on to reduce it. But certainly I would recommend, Chair, that you get legal advice on that question too.
Thanks, Robert. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. If I understand the concern of Councillor Drysdale, it's not so much that she's wanting to remove units from the present application, she's wanting to more limit it to this and no further. Is that correct, Councillor Drysdale?
That is correct, Laura. Thank you.
So what you would have that already through the fact that they're getting planning permission for what they have put forward and nothing more. So if they were looking to change that, they would have to come with a further application. So if you granted it, they would only have permission to do what they've said they were going to do. So that should hopefully take care of your concern.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick one on the back of what you've said there, Laura. So permittable development rights could be a sell or, Robert. Is there any permittable development rights in a case like this once a permission was to be granted? Any particular? It's only expanding on Pauline's question in real terms.
There will be, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what they were for that type of development. I mean, you'll get things like micro renewables and stuff like that that's being brought in at the moment, all that kind of stuff. But it's constantly changing, and unless you're at the coalface with these type of things, which I'm not, Yeah, I don't know, quite honestly.
Not tantamount to another pod anyways. I think that's about the Pauline's driving it, is it? Because you build a number of pods, you couldn't build through permittable development rights more. So, Ian, your hand's still up. We've got to come back to yourself because obviously we've got a motion to refuse in real terms from Councillor Campbell. Ian, I think you're certainly, it looks like you spoke about an acceptable pattern development. I've took a note on when you're on about precedent. It's already in the local area. I think you spoke about economic benefits and such like as well. But Ian, do you want to outline what your thoughts are on about your proposal moving forward? Then I'll go look for seconders after that. But Pauline, you'll come in. You'll see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very much as you summarised there, I believe that the economic benefits of the site through increasing and promoting tourism to the area and the jobs associated with that outweigh any possible perceived view regarding the site being unacceptably visually in the area that's proposed.
Pauline, thanks, Ian.
Yeah, I'm sort of minded with some fellow councillors at the moment, but we have not covered another issue that needs to be discussed today, Chair, if that's possible. We haven't discussed the two objections that have come in, the objection letters, which have remained anonymous with regards to the sewerage. So I think we need to have some discussion between ourselves before we go into session, or perhaps leave that until we go into session with regards to maybe conditioning the control over where the sewerage is implemented, if that's possible. Thank you.
I think probably that point in particular, if it was a wastewater treatment works, that say there was a permission granted today, a wastewater treatment works was to be implemented, you're right, it would come back to conditions if that's the case. So I think probably for the sake of a safe procedure, we move forward, make a decision, it'll either be approved or refused, or in part, whatever it may be, and then when it comes to talking about conditions, unless we want a conversation on about conditions now, so maybe we should apply that actually. We'll tell what we'll do. Well, first of all, we'll see if we've got a mover and a second in regards to an approval or a refusal. We've got a motion for both. If we have a second in regards to any of those motions that are there, and after at that point, before we go forward to make to have roll call, we'll talk about any potential conditions that would be applied if it was an approval. Pauline, then John.
Yeah, I'd be happy to second Councillor Howie's motion. Thank you.
Okay, we've got that formally. Thank you very much, Councillor Campbell. John.
Yeah, it's on Councillor Howie's motion. He didn't really outline the policy. He outlined that there'd be a benefit to the region. However, what policy is he outlining under LDP or National Planning Framework? Thanks.
I think you touched on ED9, but I'll maybe let Ian speak to that. I mentioned economic benefit in regards to ED9 in particular, but let you expand and maybe come back to Robert for advice if required. Thanks, Ian. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Chair. I am at NPF 430 tourism states development proposals for new or extended tourist facilities or accommodation, including caravan and camping sites and locations identified in the LDP, will be supported.
Excellent, that's quite clear. John, that clarity for you?
Yeah. Well, not really, because it also includes policy ED9, which clearly says redevelopment or farm extensions to existing tourist accommodation sites will be supported and not new developments.
So I'll just, the statement, so what you're probably driving at, John, in particular is the competency of the motion. I've not got any particular view in regards to being negative, that is, I should say. I think it's absolutely fine competency, but we'll take governance advice for Robert, our independent plan officer. Robert?
I'm not going to be able to give governance advice, but in terms of the issues as I understand them here, on page 242 of your papers, and correct me if I'm going wrong here, that there's a recommended variation to the decision that was taken by the appointed officer, and that's at paragraph 3.3, so that's worded, and there wouldn't be any difficulty with that, and I think that's the kind of wording that Councillor Campbell is suggesting, should become the decision. The alternative is obviously a desire to grant planning permission for this case, but what I'm not hugely clear about at this point in time is whether members are suggesting that this is compliant with policy, and if so, which policies it complies with, or if it's a departure from policy for particular reasons. That you know, but I mean, the clerk will be able to give governance advice on that as well.
So I'll just come to you first, Ian, actually, and then we'll come back to clear at that point. But so, Councillor Howie, in regards to, do you feel it's an exception to in real terms, or do you feel like because NPF 4 it applies, it is actually it complies with with policy? Ian.
I'll probably look for assistance in this as well. But obviously, my main concern is I disagree with the statement made that there would be a significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact in the region. So basically, it's a rejection of that particular statement, and I don't know where that falls within. How that would fall within a suitable objecting to what's been stated there, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. That's very, very interesting because we'll come up against this more often in the Plan Application Committee, as what we certainly do here. And as outlined earlier, from my own personal point of view, advice I've taken right up to QC level, or KC level now, it was QC at the time, was that it is subjective, and we're entitled to, as councillors, to take our own view. So your view, you're actually saying it does comply, is what I'm hearing in that terms. I'll come back to Robert, but you feel it does comply with the policies, and that's a different view for the previous decision made by what's always described as a professional plan officer. But I mean, I think you're quite entitled to do that, but we'll take advice in regards to that. We'll come to Robert first, Laura, then Claire, if you want to add, if that's okay. So just in regards to that, Robert.
Thanks, Chairman. What I'm drawing from that is Councillor Howie's view is, when I look at the suggested decision and the decision that was taken, his view is it would complement the natural environment. It would not have a significant unacceptable landscape and visual impact within the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area. So he disagrees with that view as well. And on that basis, he doesn't think it would jeopardise the scenic landscape. And if that's the case, then all other things, if you're accepting of all other things in relation to this case, then his view is that then complies with the relevant development plan policies and should be granted on that basis.
Comfortable with that, Ian?
Very much so. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. So John, that in real term makes that motion very competent in regards to, but any other points?
Can I just come back on that? Because I mean, Councillor Howie mentioned it was to do with tourism on policy ED9 and policy National Planning Framework 30. That was his original motion, and now he's gone and changed it. That he thinks it does comply with the scenic area. So what's being put forward?
Just as outlined, John. So the motion that you put forward, we've had clarity in regards to that. It has been. So it's been amended to a degree, but it's been ruled competent, certainly for myself, John. John, your motion certainly been ruled competent as well, for that matter. Now I have two people looking to come in, so Councillor Walters and Councillor Drysdale again. So Keith, you first.
Yeah, I can see that it just seems to be the difference between the two MPF4 policies, isn't it, as to which one we think is right. And on balance, I'd be happy to second Councillor Campbell's proposal.
Thanks for that, Keith. That makes it much simpler. Pauline, then we'll go to the vote.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I just wanted to make a point. Councillor Campbell, I'm listening to what he's saying here. On page 240, Chair, MPF, well, any page, but the MPF4 Policy 30 tourism is possibly a little bit out of date, actually, the way things have moved in tourism. And Councillor Campbell cleverly picked up on it in that it mentions tourist facilities, including caravan and camping sites. So legally, you have to really consider what constitutes a caravan site. Does that now include shepherd's huts and pods? Because things have moved on, as we all know. So it's just one for noting. But yeah, the wording is possibly needing changed in MPF4 Policy 30, I would suggest. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Pauline. So just conditions, and before we go to the vote, Robert, I wonder if you could outline any potential conditions if it was to be approved that would be necessary.
Okay, I had given this some thought just now. There is the usual, the first condition would be the standard 3-year timescale for implementation, like commencing works on site before the permission expired. That's fairly standard. You have, again, a whole list of roads conditions. If you look at page 226 of your papers, again, I can go through these in detail for clarity. The first one's your lay-by condition, 9 metres long at the back, gradient 1 in 40, so it drains. Condition 2 of the list that's there, access would be 3.5 metres wide for the first 5 metres into the site, as measured from the back of the lay-by. There's then your surface water trapping condition to stop water going onto the public road in offence of the Road Scotland Act 1984. Condition 4, access gradient. The first 5 metres of the access would have a gradient of no more than 1 in 8, 12.5%. Then you've got visibility areas required both sides as you sit 2.4 metres back edge of the road, 120 metres in either direction, kept clear from obstruction for the lifetime of the development. And then finally, 7, surfacing of vehicle access prior to completion of the development. So that's surfacing for the first 5 metres from the U264S public road. Other conditions that you may want to consider, would you like to condition finishes, recognising the visual sensitivity of the site? Would you want this to remain in quite recessive coloured finishes? They seem to be timber clad, these units, which I would suggest would be probably appropriate, but then you don't want them to clad them in colourful plastic or something similar like that. In due course, they could change colour, so it might be worth safeguarding that by the use of conditions. There was mention of permitted development rights, and it's a bit of an unknown at the moment. Is there a possibility that things could be done at this site under permitted development rights that would be undesirable if it's a scenic location? Would you want a condition to remove permitted development rights? That's certainly a possibility. Dark sky lighting, there will be an element of lighting with this proposal, so to try and reduce that as much as possible. In line with dark sky principles, would you want to put a condition on that any kind of lighting and ancillary scheme would be approved with officers afterwards? And the other one is occupancy. Do you want to put a condition on limiting occupancy for holiday purposes only to, ostensibly prevent them from being occupied by dwelling houses, recognising that they meet the definition of caravans? So those are certainly my thoughts on conditions. The directives, I don't think you really need to go beyond what's in the roads response. So that's page 226 as well.
Thanks for that, Robert. So there's quite a number of points made there. Councillor Baretti. Keith, I think that's an old hand. Sorry, just Tony, before you come in. Councillor Walters, I think that's an old hand, is it?
Yeah, that is.
Thank you. Councillor Baretti, then Drysdale.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Most of those conditions I would like to see is certainly the dark skies lighting conditions. That's very important. Although in that particular area there would be less problematic for astronomers because there are quite a few hills behind that absorb light. My main thing would be to see that there would be more gorse planted, because that's an area where gorse actually grows quite well, and that would help break up some of the silhouette. And certainly there's not many places you can actually see that location from, and I can tell you quite frankly, if you're driving along 75, you don't look up there.
Thank you, thanks.
Okay, Chair.
Thank you, thanks so much, Tony. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, I would be in total agreement with all of those conditions, but I'd like to further condition that the timber is not to be black. It needs to be cohesive with what's in the rest of that region. As like my fellow councillors, I know the region really, really well. I do not think the black timber sits well in Dumfries and Galloway, a personal opinion, so I don't know whether that can be conditioned or not. Also, not coloured timber and the plastic timber, it's not attractive up in the hills. Also, condition the dark sky lighting, as you've said. I was also going to suggest that we condition in, which is happening a lot in other regions with holiday properties of this size, that yes, it's for holiday use only, not long-term accommodation, and also no stag or hen parties. Sounding like a very old person here, but the noise levels would not be acceptable to nearby residents. I'd also like to condition that a wastewater treatment plant in SOAKAWAY is removed and put elsewhere, preferably near the road entrance to the site, which would go some way to alleviating the concerns that the objectors have to the sewage system. So something possibly for SEPA or the council to look into, but I definitely think we need to condition that. Thank you, Chair.
Point of order, Chair.
John, I wonder, I was got like everybody coming with the comments because whether a condition is competent or not, maybe that's the point you've got to bring up, because I've got some thoughts on it.
No, my point of order is we've got a procedural motion put forward before we go into conditions.
The only thing is, John, so from a standing orders, my understanding is once we've made a decision, that's it. That closes it down, the discussion. Maybe take advice in regards to that, and that's why I thought once we've got a motion and amendment, we should really, you're absolutely right, follow through and go on to make the decision. But at that point, it curbs the chance for any potential discussion over actual conditions, and I think it's important, if it is approved, we get the conditions right. So, but I'll take advice from Claire in regards to this. Claire?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, discussions on the conditions at this point would be relevant, as it obviously helps members to be clear about what they're actually voting for.
You okay with that, John?
Yeah, fine with that, Chair.
No, thank you. Councillor McFarlane, and then we'll ask Robert to summarise, if we can, in best way we can, the actual conditions that we're looking to be implemented if it gets approved.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A couple of things. Firstly, it's been identified that these pods, for want of a better word, will be constructed offside and will be delivered, I suppose, like a flat pack, and will be constructed. So I'm not really sure. Obviously, the applicant will be limited in relation to what's available by the manufacturer, I would suggest, because it's not been built on site and it's not been built bespoke as such. So I think there may be some limits in relation to that. In relation to the mention of objectors, there are no formal objections to this at all. There are people who have raised issues in relation to the potential of contamination of the water source, and I understand that. But there's no formal objectors, and it appears, looking at the plans and looking at the photos, that consideration has been given to how they would deal with the runoff water in the waste. I think that a suggestion of a condition to move it would be inappropriate. But again, we could take, say, expert advice on that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Andy. My thoughts were similar to what you're saying there. So no further comments or questions coming in. So Robert, if you could summarise as best you could the conditions that have been asked for there.
Okay, Chair. In relation to finishes, I'm getting a view that you're wanting a particular type, brown timber cladding, not plastic. In my experience, it is quite easy to clad these units in an alternative material, so I don't think it's onerous to look for brown timber. You could put a condition on saying that before development commences on site, the exact external finishes of the pods shall be agreed in writing with the council's planning authority, and then you advise what sort, so brown timber cladding in this case. And once you've agreed it, it's then implemented on site and thereafter retained as such for the lifetime of the development. I think that would be fine. Removing PD rights, again, is a fairly standard condition, so it's just what it does is it regularises anything further that would potentially cause visual impact, and then they would be able to make planning applications if they wanted something. What it does, it gives you the reassurance that there wouldn't be anything really significant happening there without it needing planning permission. The roads ones are fairly self-explanatory. I've been through those. Dark sky lighting would be like the finishes condition. You would ask for a scheme to be submitted and agreed in writing beforehand, thereafter implemented on the site and retained thereafter as such for the lifetime of the development. Occupancy, holiday use, that's fine, you can do that, making clear it's not used for permanent residence. We wouldn't be able to discriminate between the type of users, so we couldn't enforce against a hen party and not a family taking a holiday. It just wouldn't be possible to do that. I don't think you could go that far. Landscaping, including gorse and stuff in a landscaping scheme or boundary treatment as well, by all means we could do that too, and note that that's what's sought, and that would help your landscape integration. So I think that covers everything.
The only question I've got in regards to, before Pauline comes back in, permittable development rights, if we remove that, all that means in real terms is that, so for instance, we're removing renewables potential, say with infrastructure was difficult to get there, an application would have to come in just that. So if they were wanting a renewable, whether it's a small turbine or a PV, whatever it may be.
I mean, what it does, Chair, I'm not an expert on permitted development rights anymore, but what it does, it ensures that they can't actually do anything under permitted development rights, which doesn't need planning permission, without it then needing an application. So it's a safeguard against something that could cause additional visual impact, mainly.
Yeah, I've got no issues with that at all. Pauline?
Yeah, firstly, can I apologise? Councillor Campbell's right. It wasn't objections to the sewage treatment, it was just letters. So apologies for that, everybody. If we're not able to condition the type of people that use groups of larger property, well, pods together, can we condition noise levels, Robert, or not? Through yourself, Chair, so noise to be restricted to, say, 11 p.m, or can you not do that either? Thank you.
Let Robert answer that. When I'm thinking of licences, and I think Robert spoke about that earlier, and actual things I've had in my own ward, the concerns that have been raised and came up. So, but usually licences, environmental standards, such like. But Robert's maybe got stuff beyond that.
I think the advice would be, I mean, again, it's coming down to enforceability. Yes, you could put a noise limit condition on it, but would the development be compliant with it or not? It's difficult to say until actually it's developed. There is a licence system. They would need a caravan site licence, and that could obviously be revoked if it was unsatisfactory. We've had antisocial behaviour issues before with caravan sites and hot tubs and various other things as well, and it's generally been dealt with as an antisocial behaviour issue by the licensing authorities and the police. So I think that's probably the best way to deal with it. If it was a requirement of having a limit of 11 o'clock and then it was kind of silence after that, we're never going to be able to enforce that as a planning authority.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Pauline. Thanks, Robert. I think it was at Planning Application Committee today, similar things were coming up in regards to license, and it was a different application, obviously, completely, but I think it comes under the same terms, and I think it was Councillor Howie in particular emphasised that. So we've got a motion and amendment. We've got a set of conditions that have been proposed if it's to be approved. I'll come to Claire now as a clerk. Could you outline what the motion amendment is?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Right, we've got a motion proposed by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Drysdale. That would be to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve, given that the view is that it complies with policy. And the policies are the policies set out on page 242 of the papers, MPF 4 policies 4 and 30, and the LDP 2 policies OP1, OP2, ED9, NE1 and NE2, and the associated supplementary guidance. Given as it complements the natural environment and will not have an unacceptable will not have an unacceptable impact on the landscape or visual impact within the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area and from the Fleet Valley National Scenic Area. So again, there's a number of conditions. There are those conditions set out in the papers. The finishes being brown timber, and the request that they be agreed with the planning authority, dark sky lighting, removal of permitted development rights, and occupancy being holiday use only, also landscaping, suggestion being that landscape integration and use of gorse. And we have an amendment proposed by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Walters, and that would be to vary the decision of the appointed officer and refuse to take account of MPF 4 as set out on page 242 of your papers at 3.3. So are members clear?
I think, John, Councillor Campbell, did you have your hand up for a second there? You see you've taken it back down, but...
I did, Ian, yeah. I was just going to be a wee bit pedantic. I thought my motion was first, but it's probably based on who came in and seconded the motions. So I'll accept the amendment. Thanks.
No, thank you. I think the way it fell, I took a close note of that, Ian, just to be sure. So I think Claire's right in her assumption. But Claire?
Yes, it's the first motion to get seconded that then becomes the motion. So.
Thank you. Is it point of clarity?
Yeah, happy with that.
Thank you. Keith, were you coming in there as well?
Yeah, just a point of clarity. Does the amendment say to vary the officer's decision? Or does it say, I thought that's what you said.
Yes, it's to vary. That's just to take account of MPF4 because the original decision didn't have MPF4 in it.
But still support the officer's decision to refuse.
Yes, it's varying, but for slightly different reasons, just taking account of MPF4, so it's a refusal.
That's fine, thank you.
John, just before we go to the vote?
Yeah, it's just to help Keith. It's actually to uphold the appointed officer's decision, not the actual case officer's decision, if that's helpful, because the appointed officer's decision was based on both the LDP and the National Planning Framework piece.
That's fine, thank you for that.
We'll go to the vote then. Thank you.
Okay, Chair.
Motion?
Councillor Beretti.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane. No, Councillor Howie, sorry.
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor Walters.
Amendment.
Okay, that's the motion carried, 5 votes to 2. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. I think members, because we went through that motion amendment, the decision was quite clearly outlined in regards to that, so we don't need to rehearse that. Members, are you wanting a 5-minute comfort break before we go to the next one?
Could you make that 10, Chair?
10, okay, that's absolutely fine, and we'll come back and be as expeditious as possible with item number 6. So what time is it, Claire, sorry?
It's 10 to 1.
10 to 1, so 1 o'clock then. Thank you very much. See you then. Welcome back, members. Hopefully everybody's, again as before, more comfortable. 1 minute to go. Thanks for that wee reminder, Fiona. Just picking up on that now. So I think it's one. I'll just go on 1 o'clock. So I think it's for yourself again, Claire, isn't it, to outline our process? Over to you, Claire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Item 6, Plot 1, former Church of Resurrection site, Riverbank, Gatehouse of Fleet. Refusal of planning permission for erection of dwelling house with roof-mounted solar panels, installation of an air source heat pump, formation of access, temporary siting of a caravan and erection of boundary fence, 22/16/26 full. You have the notice of review, report and handling, observations of the appointed officer and the applicant's agent's notice of review, planning application form and supporting information, decision letter, relevant extracts from LDP2 and MPF4, and you have the photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal are the proposal is contrary to National Planning Framework 4, Policy 14 and Policy OP2 of Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan and supplementary guidance on design, quality and placemaking, in that by virtue of massing, scale and design and external finishes, the proposed dwelling house would not be sympathetic to local built forms and would not relate well to the layout, character and form of the development in this part of the settlement. Requested methods of determination is it that it is on a basis of the assessment of the review documents only with no further procedure. Grounds stated in the notice of review are in summary. MPF4 Policy 14 states that the development proposals will be designed to improve the quality of an area, whether in urban or rural locations and regardless of scale. The proposal will help improve the quality of the area by allowing the contemporary redevelopment of a brownfield site located adjacent to existing ex-local authority housing stock, which by its nature is slightly more simplistic. MPF4 Policy 14 Part B states that development proposals will be supported where they are consistent with the 6 qualities of successful places, which are healthy, pleasant, connected, distinctive, sustainable, adaptable. This proposal meets all of these criteria. The main quality pertinent to this application is distinctive. The proposal takes a similar form to the former church which used to reside on the site, albeit with a slightly more modern approach. By reducing the scale of the proposal at the case officer's suggestion, any concerns related to scale and mass have now been alleviated. Appearance has also been discussed previously with the proposed dwelling designed in part to reflect the appearance, style and character of the former church building. By designing a building to reflect the building which previously sat on the site, the applicant has proposed a building which was sympathetic to the local built form, which also paid respect to the historic building design of the former church. The proposed dwelling is of similar form and footprint to the previous church building. The location of the frontage of the proposed dwelling from the public footpath is almost identical, and the proposed dwelling is similarly situated within the plot. Building lines, building depth, street pattern forms and roof pitches have previously been discussed, and the LDP2 supplementary guidance on design has been met. The proposal is based on an existing building with a similar three-dimensional shape as that of a previous church building, maintaining local distinctiveness. Disappointed that the encouragement given to contemporary design with LDP2 supplementary guidance has been overlooked in this case. In summary, the reasons for refusal of the planning application by the appointed officer are disputed and would ask that the supporting information submitted be taken into account and the design reconsidered by the local review body. You have the relevant development plan policies for LDP2, you've got OP1, OP2, H1, NE1, NE2 on supplementary guidance, design quality and placemaking. For MPF4 you have policies 1, 2, 4, 9, 12, 13, 14, 16 and 18. So the main issues for the LRB to consider: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, would the proposed development be, by reason of its massing, scale, design and external finishes, not be sympathetic to local built forms? Would it fail to relate well to the layout, character and form of development in this part of Gatehouse of Fleet? would the proposal fail to accord with LDP2 policy, OP2, LDP supplementary guidance on design quality and placemaking, and MPF4 policy 14 on this basis? If it is not considered that the proposal accords with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? And if members are minded not to uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And if members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required? So having outlined your papers, it again now falls to the LIB to determine whether you have sufficient information to consider the review. Again, it's confirmed there will be no representations from any party here today. You have the same options available to you as outlined at the start of the meeting for the first item. And again, you have your independent planning advisor present, who's not the case officer or the appointed officer for the application. And again, you have your solicitor present, who again will act independently as required in certain matters of law. So again, if members are clear and no further clarification is required, I'll ask the Chair now to lead you through your papers for this item to decide if you have sufficient information before you to make a determination today.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Claire. Just before we do that, members, we'll ask Robert to go through the photos as outlined previously. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Chair. Again, these pictures that you're about to see replicate those in the papers. In this case, from pages 551 to 553, the photos have been provided by the case officer, and I haven't visited the site myself either, so I'm reliant upon them. This is a view approaching the site on Riverbank. It shows the church being demolished on the right-hand side and the type of housing in the locality. So this is Riverbank itself, that's the name of the street. The next view is looking south along the frontage of the application site, and again you can see the former church in a state of partial demolition behind the Harris fencing. The next view is along the edge of the site. This is looking east on Fleet side, so you've got the Harris fencing on the right hand side. And the next one is it's a view of the application site. Again, you can see the former church there, partly demolished. It's from the east with the site, application site, on the right hand side. And the final image I've got is number 5, Riverbank, located opposite the application site. And again, it provides some context to what existing housing is like in the locality in terms of design and finishes.
Thank you, Robert. Members got any questions or points in regards to these photographs? See anybody coming in? Councillor Barrett is coming in. Tony?
Apologies for the slowness. It takes so much time to find the buttons. We only saw one photograph of a building that is on or in that area, but that's actually quite a large housing development built over 2 periods. Would the officer have any more pictures just to show?
Thank you for that, Tony. Sorry, I should have turned my mic off there. Hope you're not getting an echo. That's me. So Robert's just scrolling through to see if there is. I think it's an appropriate point. I was going to bring it up further on in the debate potentially, but it's really about the types of houses that are being built here. Robert?
There are other pictures that have been submitted as part of the papers. I'm just wondering, if you look between pages 413 and 435, I think it is, the applicant's submissions, I'm sure, draw attention and provide photos in relation to existing housing nearby. I'll have a quick look if there's anything else comes back. I mean, certainly there are drawings showing the former church compared to the development on page 417. I'm just trying to see if there's anything in relation to the context of the site providing images.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The reason is that I mean, I know that area very well because I frequented that part of Gatehouse over quite a number of years because of work, and simply it's in my route. Friends down there. It's for the other elected members because I suspect Ian Howie probably knows the area quite well, maybe Pauline as well. But if you're not familiar with that area, you would know that part of Gatehouse, there isn't one building design. There's quite an eclectic mix of design, and plus you've got the primary school which is close by, which again is a design which is it's not, you know, it's not nothing even similar to some of the houses.
Excellent. I wonder if we could bring that up in debate, in particular in session, Tony.
Yeah, that's fine.
Would be a good point. I think it'll be quite a topic of conversation, that particular, the partner development in that area. So I think it's what you're picking up on, and whether this is acceptable or not, what's being proposed. Excellent. Haven't got anybody else that's so. We've seen the photos. We've had a question for clarity. There's further photos going from page 432, I think. But notice the review and related documents is pages 383 to 403. Report on handling. We'll come back at any point if I'm going too fast. Report on handling and related correspondence, which is pages 407 to 459. Councillor Campbell, John.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's on page 445. There's a site plan on there with the proposed building. Is that the same, although it mentions something about the footprint, is it in the same direction as the old church used to sit, or did the church sit in the opposite direction? Just try to get a wee flavour of how this is fitting in with the existing footprint. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Robert?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, just looking at the plans on page 483 and 485 shows the location of the building. So the kind of main elevation, if you like, the ridge is running broadly from north to south and it's facing the road. You've got an elevation there. My understanding is, again, looking back to the pictures of the former church building, was that it had a frontage which was facing the road as well. So its kind of principal elevation was on the same kind of alignment as what's proposed.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, John, for that. Councillor Walters?
Can I just say, on page 393, it shows the where it is in relation to where the church was. It's actually along the same way, but it's actually moved further along, isn't it? That's my understanding of it. It's not on the site of the church. It is in the same. It's pointing in the same way, basically.
Robert's saying yes, Keith, if that's okay. You're absolutely right in that assertion. Excellent, thank you. Observation of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, which is pages 463 to 465. It's an old hand, Keith, and it's down now. Yep, excellent. Plan application form submitted on 30th August 22. Associated plans and supporting information is 469 to 512. Decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council, 1st of March 23, 515 to 519. Councillor Walters, Keith.
Sorry, I think you were a bit quick for me there. The notice of review, so page 463, 1.3, where it says massing and scale. So the argument there is that we shouldn't be comparing the mass of this building because of 2 points. One is that it's not. It would be comparing it to a church, which isn't a dwelling, and so it wouldn't be something we should be comparing with. Is that correct? Because that seems to be the agent's point, that they've actually reduced the mass. It's actually smaller than the building that was on there before. Or is this argument seems to be saying that it doesn't matter because the church is not a dwelling.
I think, Keith, that's probably left better for when we get into debate. If we've got enough issues about have we got enough information at this moment in time.
Oh, right, sorry.
But I mean, that's a certainly appropriate question when we get into session, so to speak. Excellent, thanks for that, Keith. We'll come back to that point when we get into session. Sorry if I'm going to be a bit too quick, but let's like what's happened with Keith there. If I'm going too fast and if we want to go back a couple, we'll just do that. Relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Council's Local Development Plan 2 and National Plan Framework 4, which is 523 to 547. Members, at that point, we've seen the photographs. Do we have enough information to make a decision today? I'm of the view that we do. Members, anyone otherwise minded? Councillor Drysdale?
I am of the view, Chair, that we have enough information here in front of us today. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Pauline. And a lot of thumbs up for other people coming in there, so excellent. Members, that's us, and we're straight into debate in real terms. We've got a question really hanging out there from Councillor Walters, which we'll start with, Robert. So we'll get that covered first, Keith.
Thanks, Chair. Looking at the comments of the appointed officer as they appear on page 463, so this is paragraph 1.3. The appointed officer's view is because the previous building was a church, not a dwelling house, a similar amassing scale is not necessarily appropriate. So because of the change of type of building, that there could be a less amassing in scale. And what the concern is that's stated there, it's the massing and scale of the building as a dwelling house and in relation to development in the immediate locality, in the context of which the development would be seen, which is the concern of the appointed officer. So that's the concern. Yes, if it was a church building previously, you would expect, because of its function and its kind of status, if you like, and its role in the community, it's a public building, you would expect a different mass and scale to what you would get for a dwelling house in most circumstances.
Does that answer your question, Keith?
I think so, yes. But so as opposed to the fact that it appears that the application is trying to create something that is similar to something that was there before. Is that not what the thrust of the application is? That they are doing something that is based on the model of the church, but in a different way. Is that so? That's just a wrong route that they've taken? Is that
I'll make comment in regards to that as well, Keith. So I'll tell where I'm, because I was going to bring up a similar point, Keith, if that's okay.
Okay.
So
yeah.
On page 414, but it's probably the opposite side of that. So on page 414, it talks about scale and mass. It talks about the footprint of the site being 250 square metres, but the actual footprint, internal footprint of the dwelling being 226 square metres. That's in the first paragraph, talks about scale and mass. It goes beyond that. And ultimately, what it does go on to tell is the size of the overall site was just over 1,000 square metres. And it then goes into the hard standards for the drive, and the house actually accumulates to about 33% of overall site size. And that's certainly the point I was going to bring up. I think it's relevant. I'll bring it up at this point even, because being involved with a number of different projects, I suppose, in the past, and obviously in a lot of applications coming through here, that was an appropriate level of development scale in regards to the site. 1,000 square metres is a reasonable size site, but it's not humongously, it's not massive. It's not absolutely massive either, and I've seen that through experience. But Robert, I suppose that question was posed to yourself in particular, but I did pick up on a similar point.
I mean, I think the key thing here is to focus on the reason the appointed officer has given for making the decision, and that appears in the decision notice on pages 516 and 517 of your papers. So these are the explicit reasons for refusal, and the appointed officer's view is that by virtue of massing scale, design and external finishes, the proposed dwelling house would not be sympathetic to local built forms and would not relate well to the layout, character and form of development in this part of the settlement. So the application has been refused on that basis by the appointed officer. it's then a question, you know, you really need to probably focus on mass scale design and external finishes in this case and just arrive at a conclusion and assess the case on that basis is probably the best guidance I could give. What I was doing previously was just summarising the appointed officer's view on the merits of the case.
Thank you, Robert. Keith, you okay with that?
But obviously, the first point that is mentioned is massing, and that's why I was trying to get at this sort of idea of you know, is the massing, is it relevant that there was a building that's up that had a bigger mass on that site before? But that's fine, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Councillor Barretti, Tony, then Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. I would contest what was just said about the massing and the design. Looking at the design features have to fit in with the parameters of what this building is, and that is dwelling with roof-mounted solar panels. Now, that roof-mounted solar panels and that portion there has to face in a manner that they will function correctly, because if you've got and you are going to put an air source heat pump, then you want the two to work in tandem, I think. So there's a reason why the building is shaped like that, and it's a structural problem. It's a structural thing. Looking at the old building has absolutely nothing in relation with all of the buildings that are around there. And even the buildings that are there, why, and it says in character with the keeping of the buildings, well, frankly, I've had friends to go around there, and the buildings are appallingly badly built. They're just atrocious. They need to be upgraded. So if this building here is being built, it's not going to be built to a standard that was reminiscent of the 1960s. It's going to be built to a standard that we would expect now to fit in with sustainability, heat management and carbon capture, and reduction of the footprint of people living in that building, or proposed living in that building. Yes, it will be different to all the buildings, but it won't be an eyesore. It'll probably be a much better building physically and energy-wise.
Thank you, Tony.
Does that sound right?
Tony, it's very much aligned to my own thoughts in regards to that. We've probably got some further points beyond that, but it's when I was reflecting on this particular case myself, I've had a number of times where I've even had planning officers out in regards to looking at an older building and an extension, so it's similar but different. But the extension's got to show the newness, the modern age. So some of the built in 1920, the extension should reflect 2020, not 1920. And that's where I felt this was pretty much the same. And going back to that's a modern day house with the renewable energy and such like, how do you fit that into retrospectively into an old housing scheme, so to speak? So very similar. But Councillor Campbell, then Drysdale. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the paragraph 1.3, massing and scale on page 463, that was one of the reasons why I picked up on the reasons why the new build, does it fit on the existing footprint? Now, it was pointed out that page 393 shows where the existing church used to be in comparison where the new build is going to be. Now, when the church was built there, that was in a much larger site, in my view, whereas this plot one, the build that's going to go in there looks as if it's in such a smaller location or a smaller site, because you've got the red boundary and then probably another site just north of that on that particular diagram. So I think the massing and scale in the appointed officer's report at 1.3 is spot on. I think they got that one right. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, John. We'll come back to it at some point. Councillor Drysdale.
Oops, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just to talk about the mass and scale, which quite rightly the planning officer is pushing us to think about, which I think is relevant to this debate. I just wanted to talk about the actual house itself will cover 25% of the plot area without the drive area. And I think that's probably about right, Robert, but you you can advise me if that's not the case. But what I wanted to point out to members and the rest of the committee today is that the monopitch roofs with narrow gable widths, which I think in this day and age are a bit more aesthetic, but they're only a 17.5 degree roof pitch, which means that the actual ridge heights are similar to surrounding existing properties. So as far as mass and scale and roof height's concerned, I think that's probably relevant once we go into session. So it's just something to think about rather than a question. But Robert, can you just confirm that 25% of a house area in a plot is about right for scale and massing, or is that higher, lower, or as I say, just about right? Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just looking at the delegated report now on page 407. So it's stated that the site extends to approximately 1,050 square metres and the proposed house would have a footprint of 246 square metres. So it's slightly less than 25% of the area of the site taken up by the dwelling house. I don't think that is overdevelopment of the plot, but again, that's not part of the reason for refusal. In comparison with the surrounding area, I suspect certainly the plot sizes are smaller in the area. I think it's mainly a mix of terraced and semi-detached housing. You've got smaller plots. I would reckon that the kind of ratio would be in somewhere between about 30 to 40% of footprint for the houses, with the rest being garden ground on much smaller actual application sites. But in relation to this proposal, it's a ratio of about roughly 25% on a large site of 1,050 square metres.
Thank you, very helpful.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just put that in context. If we look at page 447 and the numbers after it, there are plots there, number 5 and 7, which are disproportionate. Number 5 seems fairly large on the plot, whereas number 7 seems to have quite a significant amount of land. To me, it looks proportionate, it looks okay, and I have no issues with that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Andy. Thank you. Councillor Howie.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to Councillor Barretti, just a general observation. We should be trying to promote inspirational new design. We shouldn't be trying to go back to trying to develop something which looks similar to housing stocks from the 1960s or 70s. This is new design. It meets our objectives of being eco-friendly, and it's the kind of building I would have thought we should be promoting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just make, there's nobody else's hand up. I'll make a small comment in regards to the size and scale of a dwelling nowadays and the difference, especially around about the renewable side and sustainable heating methods and such like going forward. I think most members are aware I'm currently doing a self-build, and the last time I built a house for myself, which was quite a number of years ago now, there was no mention of a plant room. And this house has got a plant room, and actually I wish I'd made it bigger. The amount of room it takes in regards to getting your, whether it's ground source, whether it's your battery storage, PV, such it's incredible the amount of room. So I know for a fact a plant room in a house now contained is like a garage. It takes up the same amount of room as a garage. So it does extend the size of the house, going back to modern style developments, what a family is expected to have to meet their own personal requirements going forward. For me, that's a reasonable reason why a house footprint would be larger and could be accommodated on a site of this size. And actually, for going back to the comments that we made back in the 1950s, 60s, so on and so forth, when some of the houses were built locally, it was coal fires. It was completely different with a back boiler, completely different design altogether. So I'm very comfortable with approving this. I do think actually, at my view, with the size and scale of the site and the house, because of the part of development locally, there is going back to going back to modern designs compared to older design standards. This complies in real terms. It has got a permission. That was part of the consideration when I was looking at this. There's a permission already on this site. It could have been just matters in conditions being clarified here when it comes to finishes, size, scale and such like, but full application as take it for the avoidance of any doubt. So more than happy to support this going forward as an approval. Tony, I'm going to come back to you. Nobody else is coming in. You made your thoughts fairly clear at the beginning as well. Are you looking to make a proposal, or I can certainly make a proposal if you're not?
I would, if you make your proposal, because you articulated that very well, Chair, and I would second it.
Thanks very much. I'll have a stab, and we'll always look for advice from our planning officer. But I do think that there is a pattern of development locally that's acceptable, Robert, in that area. I think to meet modern day standards as well. This is, I've got a different view in regards to the previous appointed officer when it comes to this decision. I think it's mass and size and scale is not a killer. And that's the main reasons, like I said, going back to looking at it, it's actually got a permission on it. It is a beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, but we're always beyond that because the principle of development is beyond any doubt whatsoever. So I'm really going back a step at just looking on the reasons for refusal in particular is what I'm talking about. But I think the size, mass and scale is absolutely acceptable. And I've outlined that, Robert. I don't know if you can put that in a more professional manner.
Again, Chair, thinking about this, in some ways it's similar to the last one. It's just trying to work out, I mean, I'm hearing that, you know, a number of members want to support the case, and I hear the reasons as well. It's just a question of whether you actually feel this is now compliant with the terms of the development plan, or if you're taking an exception to the terms of the development plan, and if you're taking an exception to the terms of the development plan just on the grounds it is. So it's just really clarification of that point. I mean, again, earlier I was just emphasising what the actual decision notice said, because that's effectively what you're reviewing. Those were the only reasons why the application was refused. It wasn't in principle, it was on the detail of what had been put forward in terms of massing, scale and so on and so forth. Just trying to find that decision letter just now. Pages 515 to 519. So what I'm hearing is some of you are saying, well, actually you don't think this is unsympathetic to local built forms, and you think it would relate well to the layout, character and form of development in this part of the settlement? Or are you saying, well, notwithstanding that, there are other reasons why you would want to grant permission? So, you know, is it being taken as an exception to the development plan? That's the only observation I would make. Again, like the other cases, I could also advise on conditions as well.
Thank you. So before we go to the full motion, and if there's an opposition to that, Tony, I'll let you in, then I'll come back and give my views.
Yeah, I think you articulated it very well, Chair. And I would also add to that we actually have to future-proof our buildings. Now, when the buildings were in that area were built in the 1960s, they weren't future-proof because, as you said yourself, it was coal-fired. Now, we have the current technology, which might be solar thermal PV heat pump. If at some point in the next 20 years another technology comes out, and that implies, as you said, that you're going to need a space to implement that into the existing envelope or close to the envelope, this building here, as far as I see it, has got that space built in, because we cannot exclude the fact that there will be further technological developments in the next 20 years that will make it valid for people to implement those technologies into their properties.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Tony. So my view is it's compliant, Robert, in regards to that. So I wonder if we could talk about conditions. Have you got any kind of notes previously taken?
Thanks, Chair. In relation to conditions, it's more straightforward. Possibly, I would recommend that you look at a standard time condition as your first one, so that the development shall be commenced within 3 years of the date of this permission. The only other ones, I think, in addition to that, would be those suggested by the Council Roads Planning Team Leader. So that's pages 437 to 438. And I'll try and decode these if I can. Yeah, the first one that's mentioned there is just a minor visibility access condition, because you've actually got quite good visibility at this location, unsurprisingly, because it's got a footpath, so on and so forth. Access gradients, number 2, is fairly standard. It's just the first 5 metres of the access shall be not steeper than a 1 in 8 slope or 12.5%. Requirement, condition 3, requirement for 2 car parking spaces to be provided within the site. And also a turning area that enables the car to enter and leave the site in forward gear or other vehicles. Footway construction prior to completion of the dwelling house, so that's a footway 1.8 metres in depth along the U614S required along that part of the application site. And the other one is called dwelling house composite requirements. It's just fairly standard stuff like trapping and draining and so on and so forth. Again, all of this is to ensure compliance with the Roads Scotland Act of 1984. You've got 2 directives there as well, which would also be applied just as guidance. So I don't actually think, well, it's within your gift, but I don't think anything more than that would be necessary. If you're happy with the actual detail of the proposal that's in front of you, then it wouldn't need any more conditions than that, I wouldn't have thought.
Thanks very much for that, Robert. So, so there's been a proposer and a seconder. Pauline, you want to come in? I think it's regards conditions. Pauline?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. We've all had a few cases across. I don't think that this particular property is within the conservation area, but we've had cases whereby constituents have put fencing in that's been too high. I am absolutely rubbish at page 497. Just to check, Robert, that the height of the panelling that the constituent may end up using, or the constituents, the applicants rather, it would be the correct heights, but I think they'd be guided by yourselves when they put the planning application in. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, my understanding is if fencing's within 20 metres of a road, a public road, then you're limited in height to 1 metre. But certainly no more than 2 metres. Once you're above 2 metres, it always needs planning permission. That's my understanding of it. You could impose a condition looking for the boundary treatments to be agreed in writing before the development commences, just to make sure that you've got something acceptable. The only other thing is I'm just checking on my map system to see if it's in the conservation area. I'm fairly sure it's not in the conservation area, but I'll just double check that and come back to the chair in due course, if that's okay.
That's spot on. See, I'm going to try to get you to multitask here at the same time, Robert. Apologies, but if we had an actual size, if it was within the 2 metres, then we know it's within the permittable development rights anyways, in regards to that. So if there was a chance of actually finding out what height they were, if that detail's there, then I'd certainly be comfortable leaving it as it is, because it is a full application. I take it that's why the conditions are so low, because that detail has already been submitted. But I'll let you work away at that at your leisure, Robert.
Thanks, Chair. Just to confirm, the application site is out with the conservation area. The reason for so few conditions is, yes, because it's a detailed application and you've got the detail in front of you, so there aren't really many unknowns with this one. It's all kind of been covered, if you like. So most of the conditions are just requiring them to do certain things in relation to car park and access and so on before the development happens.
Would it take a while to find out what height the fence was, the fences, the boundaries? If it does, we'll just leave it.
I'm just not sure because I don't have any record of the site before demolition that I can access, unfortunately.
Oh, well, that's fine then. Right, so Pauline, are you comfortable with the answer from Robert in regards to the conservation and the fencing?
Yeah, totally happy about that. I think either way, conservation or not, as you said, Robert, it can't be higher than 2 metres. I think just glancing at it, doing some conversions, it would be just under the 2 metres. So that's absolutely fine. I just don't. It's just a shame for applicants when they go ahead and it's incorrect, and then it costs them huge amounts of money to adapt it, and also the council having to come back and, implement those regulations. It's just a nuisance for people. So sometimes it's just not always that clear, but that's fine by me. Thank you so much, both of you.
Excellent, thank you, Pauline. So members, we've got a motion. I'll certainly give a chance, just to be absolutely fair, if anybody's got a counter view in regards to that. If not, I will ask Claire to outline her decision, ask Robert to touch on the conditions again, and then that'll be it. Business finished. Nobody's coming in. So Claire, if you don't mind, if you could outline the decision that's been made, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the local review body are looking to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve the application as it complies with the policy NPF 4 policy 14 OP2 of LDP2 and supplementary guidance. As a proposal would not be unsympathetic to local built forms due to the massing scale design and external finishes reflecting sort of a modern dwelling house and reflecting the sustainability built-in approaches subject to conditions.
Thanks, Chair. It would just be the conditions listed in the papers, in addition to the first one being a standard time condition for 3 years, the other conditions would be in accordance with the recommendations of the Council's Roads Planning Team Leader as they appear in the papers on pages 437 to 438. And although they're coded in the response, I've kind of gone through that and explained to members exactly what they would be. And obviously compliance with that would be delegated to officers as a standard practice.
Excellent, thanks so much for that, Robert. Members, I've no other business. I'll just make a comment though in regards to today. So it's, you could, some folks say it's full house. So there's been 3 overturned in real terms. So I would ask, just from, it's probably from more of a chair of an E&R perspective, but historically as well, with the local development plan 3 processes coming up, please get heavily involved in regards to that, because we need to be looking and making sure that we're going back to, I suppose Tony touched it in real terms and as far as the house, but actually future-proofing our plan and policy in regards to this wouldn't normally happen, I don't think. It's very rare it would happen where 3 would get overturned on the same day, but I mean it's been quite a collective view, very few dissenting voices, so I'd just like to try and emphasise that as much as I can, encourage all members of the council, but the ones I've got here in front of me today, get as involved as you can in that process as we go forward. Other than that, thanks very much everybody for coming here, and particularly the people within the room as well, because they've been very supportive, make my job very easy chairing this. So thanks very much, members, and I'll see you at the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Chair.